Okay, welcome everyone to the Township of West Lincoln Administration Finance Fire Committee Agenda, meeting number 6 for Monday, December the 7th. Please note, members of the public, due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, the council chamber will not be open to the public to attend council meetings until further notice. The public may submit comments for matters that are on the agenda or request to attend the viral meeting as attendees by emailing Joanne Sheemy by December the 7th, 2020 before 4:30 p.m. Email comments submitted will be considered as public information and read into the public record. The meeting will be recorded and available on the township website within 45 hours of the meeting unless otherwise noted. I'm your chair for the Administration Finance Fire Committee agenda for the last time in the 2020 council as chair. And the following items should be noted. Due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, the council chamber will not be open to the public to attend standing committee and council meetings until further notice. The public may submit comments for matters that are on the agenda to Joanne Sheemy before 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Comments submitted will be considered as public information and read in the public records. And again, the meeting will be recorded and available on the township website within 48 hours. It's basically a repeat of what I just said. Any change in order of items on the agenda by any members of committee at this time? Seeing none, are disclosure, pecuniary interest, and or conflict of interest. Are there any members wish to disclose? Okay, seeing none, we move on to appointments. Item A51-20, Jeff Suggett, Senior Manager, Integrated Mobile Solutions, Wood, re-policy on establishing posted speeds. Note, refer to item PW 19-20, Public Works Agenda, Director of Public Works and Recreation, report number PW-29-20, speed limit review policy and speed limit reduction request. There's a PowerPoint presentation to this. Mr. Suggett, are you present right now?
Yes, I am.
All right, the floor is yours, sir.
All right, so I have my slide deck. I'm assuming that I'll share my screen and we'll go through it.
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, just confirming that you can all see my screen.
I just lost.
Confirming that you can all see my screen.
It looks good, Jeff.
I just
Perfect. Okay.
I lost it.
Okay. I lost it. There's a bit of an echo going on there. Can everybody mute? Except me?
I can't mute, and I've lost your picture.
Roberta has to mute.
This happened to me last month, exactly the same way.
Councilor Rayner, you can try touching the button on the top of your screen for 1 second.
Yeah, I've done that.
And then turn it back on.
Yeah. No, Mr. Mayor, it's not working.
Oh, shoot.
It happened last month the same way. Roberta had to come here. It took her a few minutes to straighten it. I don't know what. Oh, here it is. I've got it now. It came back. It's fine.
Excellent. Okay. Just confirming again. Can everybody see my screen? Just confirming again. Can everybody see my screen?
We have a lot of backup noise. Everybody got their mic off would be good.
There's an echo in here, Mr. Mayor. I'm in the training room in the fire hall, and there's fire calls coming through in the background.
I think it's coming from Roberta's side.
It's Roberta that's got a mute.
Okay, Roberta has gone over to the fire hall to help out Councilor Rayner, so wait.
I said I had everything, but there's a fire guys are on PA system all the time here. Now it's quiet.
Well, you can mute yourself while the presentation's on.
Can I do? Oh, that's a speaker up there. I can just wind it down. You sure it's coming from there? Yeah. Okay, we've got it. Good, thank you.
All right, I think we're all right now. I'm not hearing an echo anymore. Excellent. All right, well, once again, my name is Jeff Suggett. I'm with Wood Consulting, and we were asked by the township to assist them with preparing a policy on establishing posted speeds. I have a little presentation here that I wanted to walk you through. In addition to this, we've developed a white paper on posted speeds for the township. And on the basis of that, the township has put together a policy. So here's our agenda. First of all, we'll walk you through the purpose for us doing this work for the township. Talk a little bit about current practice with regard to speed limits. Talk about our policy recommendations, and then last of all, go through 2 case studies of 2 particular roads in the township that the township was interested in having us review in terms of the posted speed. So starting off, looking at the purpose of the study, there was 4 different purposes. First of all, we wanted to give the township a better understanding of the complex relationship that there is between operating speeds, posted speed, and other roadside environmental factors that influence speed. So walking you through why it's not just the posted speed that affects operating speeds, it's a lot of other things, and actually posted speed does not have much of an effect at all. We also wanted to give the township a better understanding of current practice in the province of Ontario in setting speed limits, and speak to them about common issues and potential solutions. Number 3, establish a policy on setting and reviewing posted speeds. And finally, number 4, give township staff hands-on training on reviewing the appropriateness of posted speeds on specific roadways. So what is the current practice out there? Well, first of all, there are some definitions that we need to understand before we go any farther in this presentation. Speed is actually quite complex, and one of the things that really needs to be understood is the operating speed of the roadway. The operating speed of the roadway refers to the 85th percentile speed. It's of vehicles at the time when traffic volumes are low, so you would never measure it on a road that's very congested, and drivers are free to choose the speed at which they travel. Whereas posted speed is a limitation introduced for reason of safety, economy, traffic control, and government regulatory policy. What is its aim? It's aimed at encouraging drivers to travel at an appropriate speed in context of surrounding conditions. And finally, from the engineering perspective, design speed is important too. Design speed is the speed that's set for the design of those geometric features of the roadway that affect vehicle operation. And in general, design speed should not be less than the intended operating speed. So a design speed for a roadway might consider how many curves are on the road, or how many lanes are on the road, etc. What kind of clear zone, how much fixed object hazards there are next to the road. Getting back to operating speeds, we all know that we all intuitively drive at different speeds on roads depending on the roadside environment. There's actually a number of factors that affect operating speeds. Past experience, have we driven this road in the past? Road conditions, is it snowing or raining? Is it foggy? Adjacent land uses and their impacts on roadway operations. Does the road have a lot of accesses, a lot of driveways along it where you might expect there to be cars pulling into and out of them? Or is it controlled access? There's no accesses along it like a freeway. The type and volume of traffic will also affect operating speeds. And of course, the presence and absence of vulnerable road users, pedestrians or cyclists, either on or immediately adjacent to the roadway. So if we see a lot of pedestrians or cyclists walking or biking alongside the road, we're going to naturally drive at a lower speed. But I want to point out the bottom point there in the slide. Posted speeds essentially have no effect on operating speeds. This is being proven through research. They've actually put up different posted speeds on roads and measured the speed afterward. And even though you change the posted speed, the operating speeds do not change at all. So what is the current practice in Ontario and how does it apply to the township? Well, in the province of Ontario, there are what are called statutory speed limits, and they're very basic. You've got two choices. You've got either a 50 kilometer per hour speed. This is the speed within a local municipality, a town or a city, or in a built-up area. You also have your 80 kilometer speed. Basically, it is everything else, areas that are not within a built-up area, and there is exceptions for townships. So basically in townships like the township of West Lincoln, these would apply. So what this is saying is that you don't need to put up speed limit signs in every single one of your roads. Because of the statutory speed limits, these speeds are assumed. 50 in built-up areas, 80 outside of built-up areas. Now in Smithville, that would be considered a built-up area. Speed zones are an area that jurisdictions often choose to lower speeds in. Basically, they choose either a 30 kilometer an hour speed limit or a 40 kilometer hour speed limit. And this is because of, as you can see with the graphic up at the top, you have a much higher chance of having a pedestrian death if you have a higher speed. So looking at the needle at a 50 kilometer per hour speed limit, if a car were to strike a pedestrian, that pedestrian would have an 85% chance of being killed. However, at a lower speed, such as 30, they only have around a 10% chance of being killed. So this is the reason why many jurisdictions will implement speed zones, 30 or 40, in school areas where they're anticipating there to be pedestrians. Considerations with putting in speed zones, there are many. First of all, you need to consider whether you're going to put in an all-day speed zone versus time-based, as in the picture. You need to consider school frontage, students accessing the school from other roads, the volume of traffic on the road, operating speeds, input from school officials and members of the public, and also the police commitment to conduct periodic enforcement of the posted speed within the speed zone. So when you are choosing a posted speed for a road, what are you trying to achieve? 3 goals. First of all, you want to reduce the variability in speed among vehicles in the traffic stream. If you post a speed that is too low, you're going to have drivers who intuitively feel, based on the road environment, that it should be driven at a higher speed, and you'll have a small number of drivers that will be compliant. So all you achieve by artificially reducing your posted speed is a wide range in speeds that drivers are driving on the road, which can make the road less safe. What else do you need to consider? Well, getting back to design speed, you don't want to exceed the design speed for the road. When engineers design a speed, they consider the design speed. You would never want to have your posted speed above that. And finally, you want to minimize non-compliance. You want to try to figure out what the operating speed is on that road and make sure you're not artificially lowering the posted speed, resulting in a large number of drivers violating the speed limit. So there is a lot of research out there on trying to determine the best speed for a road. And 2 that I want to direct your attention to, which we cover off in our policy, is the TAC Speed Warrant. And that's TAC stands for the Transportation Association of Canada. They had a publication that came out a few years ago called the Canadian Guidelines for Establishing Posted Speed Limits, CGEPSL. It's developed to provide guidance and enhance consistency in evaluation of posted speed limits. What you do is you use the spreadsheet you see on the right-hand side of your screen. You fill in the boxes and you come up with a risk score, and based on the risk score, you then arrive at a recommended posted speed. One thing the township staff have noticed in using this, though, is it tends to be overly conservative in rural areas when you have a lower volume of traffic. It tends to provide you with a speed limit that's lower than the operating speed. So they do have a provision for that. They suggest that when the 85th percentile speed, the operating speed, is higher, then you need to look into why that's occurring, and they recommend that you then make an adjustment to the posted speed on that particular road. There's also another speed policy we looked at, and that's the Region of Niagara's speed policy. It has some basic maximum speed limits in urban roadways, but in rural areas, it does look at a number of risk factors, looks at design and condition of the road, length of section under review, traffic volume, number of accesses, and degree of pedestrian cyclist activity on the roadway. So with that in mind, what are some common issues that the township is encountering and what can be done about them? And the most common issue that township staff have is complaints or inquiries about posted speeds on their roadways. Township staff obviously received some inquiries about 2 roads in their township, and that was the basis of part of our study. We wanted to give the township staff guidance moving forward on how to work with these public complaints and inquiries. And the first key step would be to acknowledge the complaint in a timely manner. But then we also recommend that they always collect speed data on those roads, determine what the operating speed is, the 85th percentile speed. Share the results with the inquirer, but also share the township's policy, and then identify any action items, such as police enforcement. Second common issue that comes up in townships such as West Lincoln is rural to urban transitions. When you have roads that are 80K outside of a built-up area and the road is traveling into an urban area, what do you do? But we recommended, as a reminder to motorists, that they put up 50 km/h begin signs leading into Smithville, the urban boundary, so that motorists know that they need to go at that lower statutory speed. We also recommended on roads on the outskirts of Smithville, where based on the road environment, motorists may choose to travel at a higher speed, that an engineering study be done to make sure that the operating speed is close to the statutory speed and that operating speed doesn't tell you that you should perhaps put in a higher posted speed on those roadways. Hamlets are another issue. Outside of the area Smithville, there are a number of small hamlets. Some of them would be considered built up, and one excellent example of that would be St. Anne's. And the township of West Lincoln has already implemented 50K speeds within St. Anne's, and we feel this is appropriate because that area is built up. There may be other hamlets as well where the same thing should be studied and investigated. Gravel roads. From what I understand, there was an inquiry about the appropriateness of posted speeds on gravel roads. Elko Road was one example. We would recommend that you also collect speed data on that road if traffic permits. Some of them have such low volumes, you would have to be out there all day collecting speed data to get anything meaningful to come up with your 85th percentile speed. If that's the case, then we recommend the township fall back on the TAC Speed Warrant. This speed warrant would be appropriate because the regional speed warrant wouldn't cover gravel roads. So what are our policy recommendations based on our white paper that we did? Well, first of all, some founding principles that are good to understand and could be shared with members of the public. First of all, we always recommend that the whenever you are doing any study and you're developing a posted speed, that it must be technically defensible. So it should be subject to an engineering study. We also need to be aware of the fact that we need to understand that a majority of motorists are reasonable and prudent. There's only a very small number of motorists that will choose to speed on a particular roadway, but the vast majority will not. Whenever you are considering adjusting your speeds, you should do an engineering study, and the 85th percentile speed should be used as your starting point. We recommend that you use those two guides I referred to you earlier about, the TAC warrant or the Region Speed Warrant, as a basis for determining your posted speed. So the TAC warrant in urban areas and the TAC warrant with the Region of Niagara Speed Warrant in rural areas. And on gravel roads, as I said earlier, we suggest you just use the TAC warrant on its own. So in built-up areas, again, the province has developed statutory speed limits for built-up areas, and we affirm that they be 50 kilometers per hour in all built-up areas. Any exceptions to this would be subject to an engineering study with input from stakeholders and township council approval, such as in school zones. We also recommend that the posted speed in built-up areas should not be more than 10 kilometers lower than the 85th percentile speed. Outside built-up areas, so in those rural areas, we recommend that the statutory speed limit of 80K be used. Any exceptions would be subject to an engineering study. And the posted speed outside of a built-up area should not be more than 10 kilometers lower than the 85th percentile speed. So in terms of two case studies that we undertook, we first looked at Port Davidson Road. This road is 80 kilometers per hour statutory. It has an average annual daily traffic of between 1,500 and 1,600 vehicles per day. It's a collector road. It had an 85th percentile speed of 93 kilometers per hour. TAC recommended 70 kilometers per hour. The Niagara warrant recommended 80. Our recommendation is 80 kilometers per hour based on that 20K rule that I mentioned earlier. Yonge Street. It also has a 80 kilometer per hour statutory speed, has similar average annual daily traffic, is also a collector road. Again, the 85th percentile speed was the same, 93 kilometers per hour, with the same outcomes with the TAC and Niagara Speed Warrant. And again, our recommendation is 90 kilometers per hour. So that's it for my presentation. I would welcome questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Suggett. Any questions from members of committee regarding this presentation?
Mayor does.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
So, thank you, sir, for the presentation. Again, I appreciate it. It reminds me of some of my university studies, traffic engineering and the like, and so it's got a natural resonance with my head. My question is, so you make a professional recommendation to our council. Council, kind of yields to community pressure. I'm not saying that, I mean, somebody asked, there's not a great amount of community pressure, but sometimes, neighbors can get the neighbors all riled up, and you get kind of a situation where council feels pressured to not go with a particular recommendation. Does that open the council or the municipality up to some level of liability? Is that kind of a concern at that point? That's always been the argument, that if there's an accident there or some kind of misunderstanding, that it's really easy for lawyers to say, well, it's the township at fault because they didn't go with a recommendation of a professional.
Well, if you're adopting this policy and you're going against the policy, as we noted in the white paper, the goal of posting any speed on a road is to improve compliance. You are going to have more variability if you have an artificially low speed, and so you could be making things less safe. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, fair enough, and I think that's consistent with what I've heard before. I find it very challenging. For example, Pelham has taken a bit of a different line. Very similar roads on either side of Victoria Avenue, and theirs are all consistently posted at 60 kilometers, even though the makeup is exactly the same with ours that you just mentioned that are 80 and recommended 80. And I think that was just a case of just yielding. And again, I drive those roads often. If I go 80, which is 20 over, I'm still passed by people going 93, and I'm going to say that that's quite consistent. And then you have that mixed expectation, right? Like it's very challenging. Thank you. No further.
Thank you. Any other members of committee? Okay, I have one, Mr. Suggett. Hamilton has put in these hidden cameras, and they've got them, I think, in about a dozen locations. And they put in the paper a couple days ago that this one area had 5,600 violations in 1 month. Now, using your basis of looking at things, the operating speed then, what you're telling us based on this is that the city needs to look at this again because the speed obviously must be way too low, and therefore they're forcing people to go faster. Would that be my take on this based on your presentation?
So you're referring to in the city of Hamilton, they have these neighborhood speed zones. They've set neighborhood streets at either 30 or 40. Interestingly enough, from what I understand, the city has not done any study to confirm whether or not people are traveling at lower speeds on those roads. So you're right. If you were to put in a low speed limit, you probably do have a number of people that are violating it because they sense the road could be traveled at a higher speed, and you would probably have a number of people violating the speed limit. So I'm not too surprised.
Well, 5,600 in a month is a lot, and based on what you're saying is it's clearly telling whoever lowered the speed limit that they're creating a more dangerous situation by doing that. But so if somebody does get a ticket in the mail from this, and they could use this to go back to the city and say, basically based on operating speed, this is intentionally lowered, but the ramifications are far worse than if they just properly police enforced at the posted speed. But nobody brought that up. All people have said is some people are upset and they're calling it a tax grab, and other people are upset that the cameras are hidden and all the rest of this stuff. But in reality, the traffic is setting what they feel to be the safe speed, which is what you use the 85th percentile for. And based on your operating speed is what the people are going to drive regardless of what the posted speed is. Is that not correct then?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I find this very interesting because Hamilton, for example, they knock just about all their 50 kilometers down to 40 throughout the city, whether there's a school there is not a school there. And I was born and raised in Hamilton. I hate going into Hamilton the last little while because everything's 40, not even close to a school. That in essence is pushing people to go faster, and nobody's really using the engineering, as the mayor said. This is engineering stuff that can be documented and proven. Nobody must have done this study because throughout Hamilton, then they've just created situations where people are going to do whatever they want because they're sick and tired of they can walk almost as fast as they can drive, and they're not even near dangerous areas. Like it doesn't make any sense. Around schools, 100%, but the rest of the streets doesn't make sense. Interesting. Any other questions from any other members of committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Suggett. This was very interesting. I very much enjoyed it, and it certainly brings a lot of things to light.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so I guess I'll leave now.
Yes, that's
Okay.
fine. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I need to get my screen back. I can't seem to get my screen back.
We can see you, just so you know. So don't go.
Okay, well then somebody just mentioned if they have a question or something, because right now, unless Roberta could come out, I've lost the pictures again. Okay, request to adjust items on the agenda. 1 hour is allocated for this section of the agenda, and each individual person shall only have 5 minutes to address their issues. Some exception, the response may be provided and the matter may be referred to staff. I should say a response may not be provided. Are there any members of the public that wish to address this item? Roberta, do you have any that wish to address any item? Maybe
I
she's-
I do not see any, counselor.
What about the clerk? Is our clerk, Joanne Shimmy, there? Did
Yeah.
she receive any?
No, I did not receive anything today, Mr.
Okay, so we can move on then.
Counselor, Roberta was heading over and now she's gone back to answer your question specifically.
Oh, all right. Well, that's all right. If Joanne says there's none, that's fine, but I still have got no picture. If you can send her over, I'd appreciate it. Consent agenda items. Notice all items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial and can be approved by consent agenda items. Notice all items. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests it, in which case the item will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. This is item A 52-20, consent agenda items. That Administration, Finance, Fire Committee hereby approves the following consent items. Item 1, items 1, 2, 3, 4 are hereby received for information with the exception. Number 1 is rotation of chairs and vice chairs for standing committees effective January 1st, 2021. Number 2 is appointment of Shelley Broderick as counselor for Ward 2 for the remainder of 2018 to 2022 council term and to the Court of Revision. Number 3, information report T27-2020, November 2020 budget status report. And number 4, information report WLFD-17-2020 monthly update, November 2020. Are there any members of committee wish to pull items, any of these 1 to 4?
Mr. Chair, I made a change this morning. You must have printed it. I sent it out earlier this morning that there was a change in the agenda, consent agenda item, and item 2 is to be received for information and the recommendations contained therein be approved. I believe that's what it was. All the rest are there for information.
Item 1.
Sorry, item 1. Sorry, yes. So
All
item
item
1
2.
is there for information and the recommendations contained therein are to be adopted. And items 2, 3, and 4 are for information.
Okay. So is there any members of committee that have any of these they wish to pull? I can't.
Mr. Chair, nobody's got their hand up. Mr. Chair, nobody's got their hand up. So you.
Okay, just 1 second, please. Roberta's here. I'm going to see if I can get my picture back. I think my Surface has got a lot of Canadian Tire parts in it or something. She's on it. Hopefully it won't be long. I think it's got the Caster curse.
There we go.
Wow. There's no way I could have done all the things that she just done in order to do this. Trust me. Okay, so nobody's got their hand up. I would like to pull number 1, but as chair, I'm asking if Councillor Jason Trebetta could chair while I speak on this matter.
Okay.
Thank you. So with regards to items 2, 3, and 4, could I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Mayor Billsma and.
I'll second it.
All right.
My screen's frozen.
Councillor Jonker seconded. Any questions with regards to 2, 3, and 4? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's-
Favor.
Thank you.
In favor.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Trombetta, if you would be kind enough to allow me to speak on number 1.
Yes.
Okay, you need a mover and a seconder?
Sorry, hold on. So my mic was on. So Councilor Rayner, your request to item number 1 to be hereby received for information. Need a mover and a seconder for Councilor Rayner. It's both got Mr. Mayor and Councilor Ganan. Floor is yours, Councilor.
Thank you. I see the changes that are noted here, and generally speaking, it's a flip-flop normally. The chair becomes the vice chair becomes the chair. In this situation, I've received Public Works, and that is my area of interest, and I thank the mayor for putting me over there, but I didn't know about it until I heard it through the grapevine, shall we say. With regards to finance, I've been chair of finance for, it's not 2 years, actually, it's 4 years and 2 years of vice chair. So it's been 6 years that I've sat on that portfolio. I'm itching to get back into Public Works because roads are what I really push for out in the country. And hopefully there's an opportunity for that. But I'd like to go back and just as being in finance, it's kind of auditor general report that you get from the province all the time of how the progress is going, and going back over the years, and I've been a counselor just about as long as everybody sitting on council put together. So I'm on my 4th CAO now, and over the years there's been a lot of things that have changed, and the last few years have been extremely expensive for this township. Back in 2003, we had people do dual roles. We had the CAO and the finance do one position. And the salary back then was even under the sunshine list. Now it's over 300,000. We have huge budgets. Back then we had budgets that were zero, and we got roads done because we had the money. Now we get government grant because we're in a financial situation and we're getting 329,000. We've spent $31 million on a building that the government won't let us use. And, but it doesn't stop the 15.2% tax that's going to the ratepayers to pay for it. So the progress has been over the last number of years since I've been in 2003 with regards to finance is the costs keep going up. And now that we're in a situation with COVID and everything else, there's a lot of people out there who don't even have a job. So I know budget's coming up. I'm not going to be chair of finance anymore, but there's been tremendous increases in costs to the ratepayers over the years. And I'm just hoping that down the road, we can bear in mind that there's only so much that people can afford. And the last few years have been extremely difficult to chair because having lived out in the country and feeling what other people who live in town feel, the amount of the tax increases, and we're talking budgets all the time at 10%, and yet we're not getting some of the things done that I know the people in the rural would like to get done, but the costs still keep going. So I know the mayor's plan is to do some road work, and he's got 2 years left on his mandate to accomplish that. And I'm hoping we'll be able to do it with this COVID. I don't know where we're getting the money from, but I know down the road there's going to be a lot of serious discussion about finance and what goes where and how much we can afford. But I've just seen a trend over the last 17 years that have been very, very hard on the pockets of the people out there. And I'm hoping that somehow we can mellow it down a little bit. And,
Mr. Chair, point of order.
I'm done.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
thank you.
I just thought, since I had it for 6 years and
Well, you said your bit. We let you run a little bit, probably too long, and I'm going to call a point of order. It's not dealing with the motion.
Thank you. If you hadn't, I would have, because the item that you pulled, Mr. Chair, is not the item that you spoke to.
Yeah.
You pulled number 1, which had to do with the appointment of Shelley Braderick to the new position, and you spoke to something altogether different. So for certain, you're out of order on this.
all right.
Might have been with the
At least I ended on a high note.
Hold on,
Yep.
hold on. I'm still chair here. Hold on, one at a time. Councilor Ganan had the floor. There's one thing that really is tough in Zoom is when everybody jumps in here. Councilor Ganan had a point of order. Counselor Rayner, you said your piece, you're completed. Is that correct? Thank you.
No, just number 1 does say rotation of chairs. It doesn't
Okay,
say
so-
Kelly Badrick is number 2. I
Okay,
did number 1.
you
I'm
made,
sorry, Mr. Chair, I think, Mr. Counselor Rayner, it was because of the incorrect order on the agenda. So
Thank
the
you.
new agenda had it as number 1, so.
thank you. So if there's nothing more,
I was right with what I had, though.
okay, thank you. If there's nothing more, Counselor Rayner, I will step down and you can continue on this meeting.
All
And
right,
then,
thank you. Oh, no, you need to vote on it, Counselor Trombetta.
so seeing the recommendations, item 2, 3, 4, be hereby received for information. Any comments or no comments or questions because of recommendations? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Communications, there's no communication. Staff report, there's no staff report. Other business, A53-20, members of committee, verbal updates, members of boards of committee. Are there anybody in? There is nobody. Item A54, other business items, informative nature. Nothing. New business. Anybody got any new business? Confidential matters, there are none at this time, but there will be later. And this meeting then adjourns at, what is it, 6:48? Okay.
So, Madam Clerk, it is, we go into confidential now under which committee?
No, Mr. Mayor, we're going now into Public Works.
Okay.
Councillor Trombetta will be chairing that.
Just,
So
sorry,
just to,
yeah.
Roberta's just going to shut down and restart. So just beware of that, Councillor Trombetta, when Roberta will tell you when, you know, when you can go.
Okay, no problem.
We're going to continue. We're free to carry on.
Okay, so I'll get started if that appeases everyone. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to this second portion of tonight's meeting, Public Works Recreation Committee agenda. I'm your chair, Councillor Trombetta. Obviously, due to the efforts of COVID to contain the threats of COVID to protect all individuals, and council chambers will not be open to the public, as that's why we are doing Zoom. The public may submit their comments to the agenda to Joanne Shimei anytime before 4:30. The meeting will be recorded and posted on the Township's website 48 hours, unless otherwise noted. Is there any change in items items on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll move on. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflicts of interest? Seeing none. There are no appointments. Anybody to request any items on the agenda? Seeing none. Consent agenda items. Item PW 17-20, consent agenda items. Recommendation Public Works Committee hereby approves the following consent agenda items. Items number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 to be received by informations, with the exceptions of, and there are none. Number 1, again, West Lincoln Parade Committee, meeting notes June 17th, 2020. Number 2, West Lincoln Parade Committee meeting notes, as in for July 8th, and 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Sorry, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all West Lincoln Parade Committee meetings, and they're there for see the dates. And number 7, information report on P 28-20 sanitary and storm sewer assessment project. I need a mover and a seconder for those items. Councillor Riley, Councillor Ganan. Anybody want to pull anything? No? Call the vote. All those in favor?
Okay,
And that carries. Moving on to communications, off of the regional clerk, regional report number PW 46-20, Niagara Regional Transit, NRT on demand update. The recommendation that the correspondence from the regional clerk dated November 24th, 2020, regarding the Niagara Regional Transit on demand update, which includes a copy of the Niagara Regional Report PW 46-2020, as approved on November 19th to be received for information. I need a mover. Councillor Ganan, seconded by Mr. Mayor. Any comments or questions on this? Councillor Ganan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say how happy I am to see this report. This is exactly what I had been asking for at our last council meeting, whether there was such a report in existence. And I now see that this is the first one. One of the things that's particularly of interest to me is that they're talking about liking the idea of partnering with groups or agencies within a municipality. And our own advisory committee for seniors, we were looking prior to COVID as ways of finding transportation for our residents to come in to the seniors forum. It's even difficult, for example, for the Villa 1 and Villa 2 residents to be able to get to our community center. So that aspect, if we were able to lock into that sometime in the future, would be very appealing for residents in our community. So I just wanted to comment on how pleased I was to see this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gannon. Anybody else, any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries. Staff reports number item PW 19-20. Coordination of Engineering Services, Jen Bernard, and Director of Public Works, Mike DePaula. Recommendation report PW 29-2020 speed limit review policy and speed limit reduction request. The recommendation: one, that report PW 29-20 speed limit review policy and speed limit reduction request dated December 7th, 2020 be received, and that council approve the speed limit review policy attached to this report, and that the speed limits on Port Davidson Road and Yonge Street remain unchanged at 80 kilometers an hour. I need a mover for this. Councillor Rayner, seconded by Councillor Jonker. Comments or questions? Is that you, Councillor Jonker? I saw your hand first, and then second, I have Councillor Gannon.
Yeah, I would just like to thank staff for putting this, getting this report done, but also the part where they have taken training to do this themselves. It's going to, just wanted to point that out, that they will be able to do these studies ourselves, right? And staff took that and just wanted to commend staff that they're taking this policy on themselves, like the training that they're doing. And it's good to see that they're working on trying to save us money where they can. Just
Great. Thanks, Councillor Yonker. Councillor Gannon?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I also wanted to say thank you for the report. I'm very pleased to see it. You know, we brought this issue forward, at least I did, and Councillor, I don't know who else was in support. I think we were also looking at Councillor Riley, having had phone calls and things about the roads and the speed of people on the roads. I want to point out that my main concern when I brought this forward was one of the things that was addressed in the report, and that is some kind of an indication that they are approaching town. It was the Port Davidson Road that was most of importance to me, that they were going from 80, and certainly the rest of that road deserves to be 80. I never would disagree with that. But as they're approaching the T intersection, that is our urban boundary. So if we at least had some kind of an indicator there that we were moving towards a 50 kilometer ahead, I think that that would satisfy most of those residents in that little area. Yonge Street, people are still going way too fast, but if it's supposed to be 80, I guess it's supposed to be 80. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? I don't see. I got something just to add here. I'm glad to see this review policy came through. I'd like to thank Director DePaula and staff for putting that together. At least this kind of, you know, as councillors and as mayor, we all get that question on every street. We want our speed lowered. And, you know, at least this gives us something to go by now to tell the residents, like, you know, we have a policy that we'll go back to instead of someone coming. And I know a lot of people try, and I've done it too in the past, is that we come back to council and saying, hey, can we review this speed, or I want a stop sign here, or this. At least this way, it does kind of cuts all that out, and we can just say, hey, we have a policy in place now, and that's what we're going to go by. So I'd like to thank Director DePaula for that. So, Councillor Rayner, I see you have your hand up there.
Yeah, we used to do it a different way in the past. I know that in Abington, they had a concern with the speed on 65. So they have these electronic speed indicators that as you're approaching, it says you're going too fast and it gives you your speed. So that used to be what we used to do in the past before this study came out. But I'm wondering, does that change things down the road?
On 65, you said, or did you say on Abington?
Yeah, on 65, yeah, in Abington. You know, when you
so the region might have a different
region. That's a flashing sign, but I imagine they would use the same program to establish the speeds on their roads as
I'll get Director DePaula to chime in here. Director DePaula, can you just chime in there, please?
Sure, through the chair to Councilor Rayner. Yeah, the region has their own speed limit review policy. Jeff Suggett referred to it in his presentation. So they have their own speed limit review policy, and they would obviously review speed limit requests on their roads accordingly. But yeah, they do use the speed radar, speed sign, electronic speed signs. We do the same. We have them as well. Whenever we get complaints, we'll put them up and collect data at the same time. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Yes, I have one further question. Those markers that they put on the road, they're a counter, but can they also determine speed? I guess that's through to the Director of Public Works.
That's through the chair to Councillor Rayner. Yeah, they collect speed, Councillor. Yes, they sure do.
Oh, so they can do both.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting, because I thought that's what this Jeff Suggett mentioned was speed. I thought, well, I wonder what they do. So I always thought they were just a counter, but they're not. They're
no, they collect speed. They collect speeds as well. Yeah.
And that's
the electronic signs actually have a radar and they collect speed too. However, they're kind of difficult to calibrate. They're quite expensive to calibrate to collect speeds. But the counters that you're referring to, the loops on the ground, they do collect speed.
I know the one going into Bimbrook is always about 10 kilometers out from the one. So like you say, they must be hard to calibrate because it's not even close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Rayner.
Thank you.
Seeing anything else, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. Moving on to number 9, any members of the committee, any other business of an informative nature? I got a couple of them. One, actually 3, sorry. So sorry, it's going to be a little bit here. One, I'd like to, first I'd like to thank Councilor Riley. I saw that video that was posted for the tree lighting. A lot of hours went into that, editing. Yeah, it's probably, I'm not a editing guy, but I'm quite sure there's more than 40 hours of work probably to edit something like that. So I saw that video of the tree lighting ceremony. I saw Councilor Gadan all dressed up there, and job well done. For the tree lighting ceremony, I as Chair of Public Works, the recreation, I thought that was a good job of a video, and a lot of work went into that. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that did that work. It doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you very much for that. The second thing, through you to Mr. Mayor, obviously we had a lot of traction controls all over the municipality this weekend. Any word on these roundabouts and this this damaging that's been going on through the Leisureplex? I've seen that today. Anything that has been?
So it come up at EOC today, and certainly with the revelation that it wasn't just the roundabout that was targeted, but the Leisureplex was targeted as well. And the at the time of the EOC, our own Bob Dennison was meeting with police to file reports. Unfortunately, they're going to do an investigation, but as is often the case, vandals get away with their dastardly deeds. It's really unfortunate that they decided to mess up our town the way that they did. When it first was just on the roundabout, I think most of us assumed it was the roundabout was the target. And maybe less so when they look at the Leisureplex and what they did over at the Leisureplex. I think it was a target against all the residents, because no reason to destroy the Leisureplex except to be malicious. And there's 1,000 things I could say. Most of them include swear words, so I'm going to refrain, just to say that the police are well informed and they're conducting an investigation, and our staff are assessing the damage at the Leisureplex, because of course that's our responsibility. And the region, of course, has been noted that there's about $7,500 worth of damage to the sprinkler systems and plantings of the roundabout, which is most unfortunate. That's all I can say.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if you do hear anything, please relay the message to us so we can find out. But I appreciate that info. And just lastly, I'd just like to say to to members of council, thank you very much for letting me host being Chair of Public Works. I thank you, Director DePaula, for working diligent with me for these past 2 years, but I'm being shipped off to another committee. So I'd like to say thank you. And Vice Chair Yonker, thank you. It was nice working with you on this committee. And, you know, again, thank you, Mr. Director DePaula, for all the help you with Public Works. That's it. So, sorry, go ahead, Councilor Yonker.
I would just like to thank you for the time that we've spent together the last 2 years, and you've been helpful. Hopefully I can fill the big shoes, but we'll look forward to the next 2 years. But I was looking forward to having you as vice, but things change and we move on. So thank you for chairing for the last 2 years.
Thank you. So if there's anybody new business, I don't see any new business, no confidential matters. So I will adjourn this meeting at 7:02. Thank you.
Well done, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, then
Don't know, Mr. Mayor, whether Roberta needs some time in between the planning meetings and this meeting.
okay, there she is. Okay.
Counselor Ganan, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Township of West Lincoln Planning, Building and Environmental Committee meeting. This meeting is Monday, December 7th. It's meeting number 7. Note to members of the public that due to efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, the council chamber will not be open to the public to attend standing committee and council meetings until further notice. The public may submit comments for matters that are on the agenda to jdyson@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 on the day of the meeting. Comments submitted will be considered as public information and read into the public record. The meeting will be recorded and available on the Township's website within 48 hours of the meeting. I'm Cheryl Ganan, and I will be chairing this planning committee meeting tonight, as well as the public meetings involved. So first of all, to members of committee, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest? And seeing none, we will move into the public meetings. There are 3 public meetings this evening. The first meeting is a meeting to consider an official plan amendment for the Township of West Lincoln Road Allowance Opening and Development, file number 1701-001-20. The Planning Act requires in section 17, subsection 15, that before adopting an official plan amendment, council must hold at least 1 public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the amendment to the Township of West Lincoln's official plan. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendments, and any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. The Planning Act requires under Ontario Regulation 543/06 that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the local planning appeals tribunal. Would the deputy clerk please advise the method and dates by which notice of the public meeting was given?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Proper notice was given by way of advertising in local newspapers on October 29th, 2020, as well as advertised on the Township's website.
Thank you. So I'm going to now call upon our planner, Garrett Borma, to explain the purpose and reason for the proposed official plan amendment. Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Township of West Lincoln has initiated a public consultation and planning process to address the opening and upgrading of rural unopened mud roads in West Lincoln. This planning process was under the direction from the Planning Committee and Council back in September to address the rising number of serious inquiries about opening unmaintained mud roads. These requests included to open portions of Shaw Road south of 16 Road, Allen Road, Concession 3 Road, and the Lincoln West Lincoln Boundary Road near Camden. In all cases so far, the purpose has been to gain access for landlocked parcels for the intention of building dwellings. There are currently no policies or procedures to address road openings in West Lincoln. For transparency and direction on future inquiries, planning staff have drafted a set of official plan policies that could guide the road opening approval process. The draft policies included that were provided and sent out for public consultation included the requirement for the road opening to have minimal impact on the environment, a requirement to further support agriculture, a requirement that the lot be developable, that the extension is gaining access to, a requirement that the extension or opening is economically sustainable from a township operating perspective, and that the extension or opening can improve the township transportation network. If the road or extension or opening can satisfy the policy, the applicants could then apply for an official plan amendment to amend the official plan road schedule and commence an integrated environmental assessment process with the township. This would be done at the owner's expense. Following council approval and the integrated EA process, the applicant would then be able, through an agreement with the township, to construct the road at their own cost. This draft policy has been circulated to the public and agencies. So far, there has been one comment from the public received with respect to the concession 3 extension. Township staff will continue to collect comments from members of the public and agencies prior to making a recommendation to planning committee at a future date. Through this report, township staff are also making a recommendation that a second planning process be also undertaken to look at the opposite policy, how roads can be closed and sold off, and have those policies in the official plan as well to further guide township staff. And just to let you know, I believe one individual who submitted the written comments is on the Zoom call this evening, so he may have some oral comments as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So I am now going to ask if there are any oral or written submissions from anyone present on the Zoom meeting regarding the proposed official plan amendment. I would like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at the Zoom meeting would like to make comments and or provide written comments, they should do so now by using one of the two options. Option 1, of course, is to use a computer or a smartphone to raise your hand. Using the control on the Zoom options displayed on your screen. And option 2 is using a landline or telephone, dial *9, and this will notify staff that you have raised your hand. So we'll wait a minute on the assumption that the person that Mr. Borma was referring to might wish to speak.
We do have a participant that would like to speak, Councillor Ganan.
Okay, thank you. That person can go ahead. So when you're ready to speak, if you will just please give us your name, first of all, unmute your microphone, of course, give us your name, and then make your comments. Once you have been acknowledged to speak, please unmute your microphone. It's important that you provide your comments now. If you've not done so in writing or verbally, LPAT may not consider comments made during any other council and or committee meeting. So again, hopefully that's been enough time for this person to decide that they'd like to speak. Mr. Borma, do you know who we're looking for by chance?
I believe it's pronounced Wojtek, and I see his hand is up, but he looks like he's muted.
Okay, so we'll just wait a second to get it under. Okay, so once you're unmuted, sir, you can go ahead. Oh, so they're looking for a phone number, it says on the chat. Can I do that? The unmute is not working, they're saying. So, Ms. Keith, is there anything that we can do to help out from our end? And she's trying to help. Okay, good. The joys of a Zoom meeting. So we do want to give this resident an opportunity to speak. Okay, I think that perhaps while they're trying to work that out, I will go to the next thing, which is members of committee. So do any members of committee have any oral or written submissions on the proposed official plan amendment? Please note that members of the committee must make their comments now, as LPAT may not consider comments made under any council or committee meetings. Any member of council wishing to speak is required to unmute their microphone to talk, and once they're finished, they should mute the microphone. So is there a member of council that has any kind of a comment on this item? Mr. Mayor, please.
I'll just fill some airtime so that gives the resident an opportunity. So,
Yeah, I think
just in general, very much in favor of this. Just to keep our community, I guess, always vigilant or growing or dealing with, so that we're not static. I think it's very, very important to kind of keep looking for efficiencies and growth opportunities. So that's about all I can say. That's enough airtime I've used up.
Thank you. Any other further comments from members of committee?
I'll also maritime too. I do like how the staff is talking that if we're going to open a road up again, it's going to be a cost. If I understand it correctly, it's going to be a cost to the applicant, right? Is that, do I understand that correctly? Right? And I think that's a good policy to have, right? If you're going to purchase property, be wise where you're purchasing it and consider the costs of getting access to it as well. So good on staff.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, first of all, a landlocked piece of land, might be quite inexpensive. So I think you have to realize that there will be additional costs. And I think that the staff have built into that quite well. So, okay, I'm not sure what's happening with our member of the public wishing to speak. Okay, so they think it's going to work now. So we're, if you're there, sir, go ahead, please.
Oh. Hello?
Hello, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yes, okay. Hi, my name is Wojtek and my assistant is John. And so, of course, we are talking regarding the concession tree. Right. So currently there is an existing road running through the property for almost 20 years, connected to concession tree, which is a for now unknown reason not official. So we need to know the solution regarding our lack of frontage to an open and maintained portion of the road. So this is our basically question.
Because we are unable currently to have concession 3 open, and so this hinders us from developing this lot.
Okay, is there anything further you wanted to add to that?
Actually,
it is basically because it's a lack of frontage, and also because for this specific lot, the top portion is all covered under not heritage but conservation. And that's also a little bit of a problem to create a road that cuts through to the southern part of the lot. Additionally, on both sides of our property, there are the neighbors who have this kind of unnatural way to enter their developed area. And so we're wondering how we may be able to have our property developed.
Okay, so you understand that you are able to ask your questions tonight, and those things will be taken into consideration. But this is not a night where you will have those questions answered precisely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you, I think that we've read your letter. I think it was your letter also that came with our agenda package when we saw this, and so most of us would be aware of that. And thank you for speaking to that. Did you want to say anything further about your concerns?
I think that basically covers the issue. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for taking part in the process.
Thank you.
Okay, so I presume that there are, since we didn't have anybody else come on in the middle when we were having technical difficulties, that there are no other members of the public, but I will ask one more time if there are any other members of the public wishing to speak to this item. Okay. All right, so please be advised that a technical report is being considered by the committee this evening, and that a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future committee and/or council meeting. Please be advised that once committee and/or council has made a decision with respect to the official plan amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of their passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you email the Township Clerk, Joanne Shimei, at jshimei@westlincoln.ca. Anyone who is interested in observing council and/or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus miss the opportunity to attend applicable meetings. It is suggested that you watch the Township's website for posting of agendas to review items that will be discussed at council and/or committee meetings. The agendas for meetings are posted on the Township website after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meeting schedules are also noted on the Township's website for the public to view. If you wish to receive notices by email, it is suggested that you contact the Township Clerk to advise of your request and include your email address along with your mailing address and your phone number. So this public meeting with respect to the proposed official plan amendment is concluded at the hour of 7:17 p.m. And we'll move to our next public meeting this evening. So this is a public meeting to consider a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Casterville United Church, file number 1601-009-20. The Planning Act requires in section 34, subsection 12, that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the amendment to the Township of West Lincoln zoning bylaw. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. The Planning Act requires through section 34, subsection 13, that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the local planning appeal tribunal. Would the Deputy Clerk please advise the method and dates by which the notice of the public meeting was given?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Proper notice was given by way of mail and email public notice circulation on November 11th, 2020. Additionally, a yellow sign was posted on the subject property as well as advertised on the Township's website.
Thank you. Will the planner, Madison Etzel, please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Maddie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An application for rezoning has been submitted by the trustees of the Sinclairville Community United Church for the lands municipally known as 9550 York Road. This application is required as a condition of consent for a lot creation in a hamlet as approved by Committee of Adjustment Application B03-2020-WL on October 28, 2020. The application will be finalized to ensure that the church has enough land to comply with the required minimum lot size provisions to facilitate the sale of the church. The owner is proposing to sell the church to a community organization and retain and maintain the cemetery. This rezoning application proposes to rezone 4,261 square meters of the newly created lot known as parts 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8 on the attached survey in the report, from open space to institutional to permit the use of the property for the existing church. Rezoning this lot will provide for the church parcel to have the proper amount of space should repairs or alterations need to be made to the church building, or should a new septic system be required in the future. This application has been evaluated against the provincial, regional, and township policies. According to the 2020 provincial policy statement, the subject lands are designated in the Hamlet settlement area of Casterville. Policy 7.2.3 of the township's official plan and the regional official plan require that the minimum lot size for new lots within hamlets shall be 1 hectare, unless determined through a hydrological study that a smaller lot size will accommodate a private water and sewage treatment system for long-term operation. The applicant submitted a letter completed by Ken Egger from Egger Excavating with both planning applications. This letter stated that the church is serviced by a Class 5 holding tank. Since the property is serviced with this system, there are no sewage discharge into a septic system, which could potentially impact the groundwater quality. The region, the township no longer required the submission of a hydrological study. Based on the provincial screening criteria, the subject lands exhibit potential for the discovery of archaeological resources due to the abutting cemetery and nearby Welland River. According to section 2.6 of the PPS, development shall not be permitted within areas of archaeological potential unless significant archaeological resources have been conserved. Although the applicants do not plan for development on these lands, the township and the region have implemented a condition on this rezoning application, which states that a holding provision be placed on the property for parts 4, 5, 6, and 8 to ensure that an archaeological assessment be submitted to the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries to receive an acknowledgement letter confirming that all archaeological resource concerns have met licensing and resource conservation requirements. The final wording of that holding provision has not been finalized, but it will require this assessment to be completed and submitted prior to any site alteration, buildings, or structures being permitted on the subject lands. The public and agencies were notified on November 11th. Planning staff has received no public comments for this application. The MPCA submitted comments through the original consent application and have provided no objections to the proposed. Overall, township staff have completed a preliminary review of this application against the applicable planning policies, and a future staff report will provide a recommendation to planning committee following input received through this public meeting process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is the applicant or their authorized agent present to speak to this application? I don't see anyone. Okay, so I'm going to ask for public submissions now. Are there any oral or written submissions from anyone present on the Zoom meeting regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? I would like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance on this Zoom public meeting would like to make comments and or provide written comments, they should do so now by using one of the two options. Option 1, using a computer or smartphone, select the raise your hand control that can be found on the Zoom options displayed on your screen. Or option 2, using a landline or telephone, dial *9. This will notify staff that you have raised your hand. Once you have been acknowledged to speak, please unmute your microphone. It is important to provide your comments now. If you have not done so in writing or verbally, as LPAT may not consider comments made during any other council and or committee meeting. Also, anyone wishing to speak is required to unmute their microphone to talk, and once they're finished, they should again mute their microphone. Prior to speaking, please provide your name and address for the record. So I'm going to go to Ms. Keith to see if she is aware of anyone wishing to speak to this.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Treble.
My apologies. I just got a text from Mr. David Brenzel, who represents the applicant group, saying that Zoom is not letting him speak. I guess when you asked for applicant or agent to speak, he went to try but wasn't successful.
Okay, so I see he's now on. I didn't see his name earlier.
Oh, he is over here now. Perfect.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So, Mr. Brenzel, is that your voice I'm hearing?
That's me, yes.
Oh, good. You're nice and clear. You can go ahead, sir.
We have gone over the document that was sent to us, and we feel that everything is in order with it. And the only thing that I questioned very early in this process was having the parts 6, 7, and 8 zoned because they're open space now, but it was explained to us why that would happen. And we are okay with that. And we're okay with the document.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak to this? Okay. Mr. Treble, do you know of anyone else wishing to speak?
Madam Chair, I do not. The only other name I recognize is Lyle Brenzel, but he's also applicant / agent.
Okay, okay. So I think that we can just move on then. I don't see any other name connected to this file that I'm aware of. So.
And I'm not showing anyone else, Councillor Ganan.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so I'm now going to ask members of committee if they have any oral or written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Please note that members of the committee must make their comments now, as LPAT may not consider comments made at any other council or committee meeting. Any member of council wishing to speak is required to unmute their microphone to talk, and once they're finished, again, to mute their microphone. So members of committee, is there anyone wishing to make a comment on this? Okay, and seeing none. Pardon me, please be advised that a technical report is being considered by the committee this evening and that a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future committee and/or council meeting. Please be advised that once committee and/or council has made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of their passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, Joanne Shime, at jshime@westlincoln.ca. Anyone who is interested in observing council and/or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus miss the opportunity to attend applicable meetings. It is suggested that you watch the township's website for posting of agendas to review items that will be discussed at council and/or committee meetings. The agendas for meetings are posted on the township website after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meeting schedules are also noted on the township's website for the public to view. If you wish to receive notices by email, it is suggested that you contact the township clerk to advise of your request and include your email address along with your mailing address and your phone number. So this public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is concluded at the hour of 7:28. And we have a third public meeting this evening. Pardon me. This is a public meeting to consider a zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Niagara Pallets, file number 1601-008-20. The Planning Act requires in section 34, subsection 12, that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the amendment to the Township of West Lincoln zoning bylaw. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. The Planning Act requires through section 34, subsection 13, that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the local planning appeal tribunal, or LPAT. Will the deputy clerk please advise the method and dates by which notice of the public meeting was given?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Proper notice was given by way of mail and email public notice circulation on November 11th, 2020. Additionally, a yellow sign was posted on the subject property as well as advertised on the township's website.
Thank you. Will the Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Mr. Treble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will give a brief overview. I can point out as well, Madam Chair, that the panelist by the name of Craig Rowe is the agent for this file, and so I'm assuming he will want to speak after I have finished.
Thank you. That helps to know who I'm looking for.
Yeah, and as I said that, though, he just disappeared, so I'm not sure where he's gone.
I see him, so it's just fine. So you may carry on. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So this application, Madam Chair, is a bit of an extension of an application that we dealt with towards the end of last year, where there was a property on Regional Road 20 to the east of Bismarck that had a business type use on it. And we agreed to an extension of a 3-year temporary use bylaw to allow them time to relocate to their business site. So Niagara Pallets has operated off of 2906 South Grimsby Road 8, which is the former John Deere dealership at the corner of South Grimsby 8 and Highway 20. They've operated there for a few years now, but have found that their site is a bit tight. And so they have entered a deal with the Davis family, who owns the farmland at 2930 South Grimsby Road 8. And there is a severance that was processed in July to allow for about an acre of land to be taken from the farm and added to the commercial use. Garrett, I think, might be able to pull up a screenshot. So part 3, Madam Chair, thank you, Garrett, is the existing business that Niagara Pallets is operating on. They have a plan actually through site plan approval to substantially expand the buildings on that property. And so part 1 is being added to the commercial business from the farmland around it in order to assist with the expansion plans and also to help clean up the farm parcel to the east of Bismarck. The nature of or shape of part 1 is somewhat unique because of the fact that there is a farm entrance that is on the regional road, and it's right beside the dotted line, which you'll see to be a ditch. The application is to create this angular piece at the highway so that the farmer can still access the farm by that existing driveway. There is a plan in the works that I believe will have Conservation Authority approval to relocate this ditch so that there will be actually additional lands available for development. So, Madam Chair, what's before us tonight is a rezoning application for part 1 to change the zoning on that part from developmental, because it's actually part of the settlement area that's just further to the west at the intersection with the traffic lights, and change it from the developmental zone to a commercial zone to allow for the extension of the part 3 uses onto that property. There are mainly the focus of part 1 will be for stormwater management purposes, which includes a fire pond, but there will be some zoning provisions added to part 1 and part 3 that will deal with parking requirements. The actual details of what that wording looks like have not been hammered out just yet, but there is a more detailed site plan that is being submitted that will assist us in understanding exactly what the requirements are. So, Madam Chair, the rezoning that's before us tonight is really just a condition of a severance that was approved by Committee of Adjustment in July. The comments that have been provided to date include the Niagara Region and the Conservation Authority. I think we're still waiting for official comments from the Conservation Authority with respect to this rezoning, but their preliminary comments indicated support, and they talked about support in principle for the relocation of the water course as well, subject to engineering drawings of the realigned channel, a reseeding plan, and a sediment and erosion control plan, with a requirement that there be a 5-meter setback from the realigned channel. So all of that detail will then appear in the draft zoning bylaw when it comes back to committee for approval. I think, Madam Chair, I'll pause it there, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, so I think we'll leave it at last point, and we'll let committee members come back with their questions eventually. And I'm going to ask if the applicant or authorized agent wishes to speak. And I see, Mr. Rowe, that we have you back on. Are you wishing to speak to this?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. I have a brief couple of slides. As usual, Director Treble has stole most of the content from my presentation, so I will.
Add on.
I know he always gets ahead of me. I just have a couple of visual slides I'd like to share just to kind of help quantify what's going on the site and help members of council better understand. So I'll just share my screen at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Just let me know everyone can see that. Yes, Madam Chair. Great, perfect.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Great. So my name is Craig Rowe. I'm a senior planner with Upper Canada Consultants, and we're the consulting planning and engineers that are working for Niagara Pallet and the Davis family. So as Director Treble alluded to, the two properties in question are 2930 South Grimsby Road 8 and then 2906. So this is Niagara Pallet here. This is the Davis family holdings. And then the hamlet boundary line generally kind of goes like this across the screen. This is generally where that part one that was on the severance sketch was shown. So this portion of land being added to Niagara Pallet and then the remnant still being 2930. So as the director alluded to, yes, this is a condition of consent. We need to have the zoning bylaw amendment approved before we can finalize consent and then have the lands conveyed from the Davis family to Niagara Pallet. So what we are doing is we're applying the site-specific commercial C3 zoning. So Niagara Pallet currently has that zoning on their property. It's going to be extended to that additional piece of land with a site-specific provision applying to the whole lands to allow for a reduction in parking. When you do the calculation based on the ratios in the zoning bylaw, you need 310 spaces. We're coming down to 90. Just given the nature of the use, it's a lot of warehousing space inside and an assembly area. It's really more of a commercial parking requirement. There's just not that many people there. So we feel that this is an appropriate reduction and will still maintain all the needs of Niagara Pallet. In addition to that, when we completed the severance, the 2930 parcel was already undersized as an agricultural parcel. You need to be a minimum of 40 hectares. In this case, now we've removed the lands. We also need to rezone 2930 to reflect that has deficient lot area. So it's about 19 hectares. So that's the portion of that. So it'll be agricultural site specific, reflecting the deficiency there. And then the remnant portion that's in the boundary is still going to maintain that D development zone that we have. So that's emulated here on the screen. So these are the remnant agricultural lands with the site specific for reduced area. Here's Niagara Pallet's existing operation and the additional part. C3 with the site specific for the reduction parking. And then this is still part of 2930. This will maintain that D development zone. So really the impacts that we have here is it's going to allow for a fairly sizable expansion of Niagara Pallet, which is excellent news for the township. And our clients are very excited to be moving forward with it. As Mr. Treble alluded to, yes, there's a temporary bylaw that was passed for the property out on Highway 20 in Bismarck. So as soon as these lands are moved in, our client will have ownership. They'll be able to start their construction. We have the site plan drawings actually going in this week to the township, just finalizing up our landscape plan. That'll be going in, and once we're able to execute that site plan agreement, they can start moving those materials off of that agricultural property consistent with the temporary bylaw that was granted to us by members of council. So it's a requirement. We got to get this done to execute the site plan agreement and the consent. It's going to help us satisfy those requirements for the Highway 20 property. And then there's still a positive agricultural benefit because the remnant lands are still going to remain in production. And as I'll just go back to this. So just as the director pointed out, you can faintly see this bit of a depression here. I'm not going to call it a water course. It's more of a ditch, but with taking this additional land, it's going to be channelized down here and connect into the roadside ditch and then the outlets down at 20 Mile Creek. So MPCA isn't commenting on the zoning application, but we will be required to circulate the site plan to them, and we're going to need a permit to do those channel works. But of course, we can't do it until we merge the lands together. And in order to do that, we need to get the zoning approval tonight from you. So those are my comments. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so I'll go to the public and then we'll come back to members of committee who may have questions for you, Mr. Rowe. So
Thank you.
Stay in place. There we go. Okay, so are there any oral or written submissions from anyone present on the Zoom meeting regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? I would like to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at the Zoom public meeting would like to make comments or provide written comments, they should do so now by using one of our two options. Option 1, using a computer or smartphone, select the raise your hand control that can be found on the Zoom options list displayed on your screen. Or option 2, using a landline or telephone, dial *9. This will notify staff that you have raised your hand. Once you have been acknowledged to speak, please unmute your microphone. It is important to provide your comments now. If you have not done so in writing or verbally, as LPAT may not consider comments made during any other council and/or committee meeting. Also, anyone wishing to speak is required to unmute their microphone to talk, and once they're finished, they should again mute their microphone. Prior to speaking, please provide your name and address for the record. So we have some people on this call who may wish to speak. We'll let Ms. Keith check. So we have some people on this call.
I'm not seeing any, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to members of committee then, remembering that both our director and Mr. Rowe have agreed to answer any questions that you may have. Do any members of committee have any oral or written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Please note that members of committee must make their comments now, as LPAT may not consider comments made at any other council or committee meeting. Any member of council wishing to speak is required to unmute their microphone to talk, and once they're finished, they should again mute their microphone. So members of committee, any questions or comments?
Are we all here?
I see shaking heads, gentlemen, so you must have both done a wonderful job. I don't see.
Madam Chair, are we missing a counselor?
It looks like we have lost.
I think we missing Mike. I just don't know if he's having technical difficulties. I know he's at the town there.
Yeah, he's not in the same area that I am, but okay, maybe we can get that checked shortly. All right, so moving on then, please be advised that a technical report is being considered by the committee this evening and that a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future committee and/or council meeting. Please be advised that once committee or council have made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of their passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, Joanne Shimei, at jshimei@westlincoln.ca. Anyone who is interested in observing council and/or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus miss the opportunity to attend applicable meetings. It is suggested that you watch the township's website for posting of agendas to review items that will be discussed at council and/or committee meetings. The agendas for meetings are posted on the township's website after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meeting schedules are also noted on the township's website for the public to view. If you wish to receive notices by email, it is suggested that you contact the township clerk to advise of your request and include your email address along with your mailing address and your phone number. And so this public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is concluded at the hour of 7:44.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Have a great night.
Thank you very much. Okay, so as per your comment, Councillor Riley, I don't know whether Ms. Keith has time to check again on Councillor Rayner to see how things are going there. She's done a lot of running back and forth from the township office over to the fire hall, but it might be that he's had problems again.
Getting her steps in today.
More than her step. Okay, moving on.
I'm just heading over now,
Oh,
Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for checking on. Okay, I am going to move on to the rest of our regular agenda, however, because we have an appointment here as well. So first of all, I'm going to ask members of council if there are any changes in order of items on the agenda. And seeing none, we are going to move to appointments. We have under item P83-20, Steve Weaver, Richard Van de Zan, and Aaron Farrell, Urban Boundary Expansion Planning Consultants, regarding the Smithville Master Community Plan, Intensification and Greenfield Density Analysis. And they also have a PowerPoint presentation. So I'm not sure who's taking over. Mr. Weaver, are you in charge again?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
You can.
Excellent. I do have a few folks with me who are going to be running the presentation. So Raymond Tung from AECOM, I believe, is going to screen share it.
Okay.
Raymond, are you able to do that now? Excellent, thank you. Everyone can see that okay? All right, and I believe Carl Grunice from AECOM was going to kick things off. Carl, or was it Richard was going to kick things off? I'll let you update us on that. I think you're muted.
That's better. Hi, everybody. Madam Chair. Raymond, can you just please go to the next slide? So today, the purpose of this presentation is to provide us an update of the Smithville Community Master Plan. Steve's just going to provide a little bit overview of the project timeline, where we're heading. You're probably familiar from his last presentation. Then we're going to turn it over to Aaron, who's going to present a summary of the sub-watershed study preliminary findings. Then Aaron's going to pass it back to me and Steve. I'll provide an overview of the background characterization report. And then Steve will walk us through the draft development concepts, which I think everyone will find pretty exciting. And then lastly, we'll just provide some direction on where we're heading. So if we could then maybe, Raymond, pass it over to Steve for the project timeline.
Perfect. Yes, thank you. So just to recap a little bit, because this slide was presented to the committee back in November, you can see there are several phases identified for the project order. The first phase, or the preliminary phase, has been completed, began in late 2019 and ran through the better part of spring for this year, and involved a lot of the background data collection as well as some public and stakeholder consultation. Ultimately resulted in the preparation of several reports. At the meeting in November, I highlighted one of those reports, which is the infill intensification report, and gave you some of the summary results from that analysis. But as you can see listed, it's sideways, but there's several other reports, and you'll hear some of the preliminary results of that work regarding servicing and transportation and so forth in the presentation tonight. So where we are right now is getting towards the end of phase one, which is really the identification of the preliminary concept options. And we will present those options tonight and some of the information that was used to arrive at those options. And where we're going with that is that we want to evaluate those options and do an impact assessment to determine what components of those options are preferred and ultimately recommend a preferred community structure option. That option will then provide the basis for phase three, and throughout phase three, there will be more detail added, identifying some implementation items, some policies, monitoring and management recommendations. And then there is an option for beyond the end of next year, some additional sensitivity testing, which is essentially refers to additional evaluation of that preferred option and environmental work. So from here, if you can go to the next slide, Raymond, I'm going to pass it over to Aaron Farrell, who's going to outline some of the findings to date through the sub-watershed study.
Thanks, Steve. Can we go to the next slide, Raymond? Thank you. So very briefly, the sub-watershed study is looking at the natural and environmental features and systems within the study area. We have various specialists that are on the sub-watershed study team, terrestrial and aquatic ecologists. We have stream morphologists, hydrogeologists, a karst specialist, and water resources and stormwater management engineering. The key output that we're going to be getting from the sub-watershed study are input to the land use planning, specifically the natural heritage system for the study area, as well as defining the water course and the stormwater management plans for the study area. Next slide, please, Raymond. Thank you. So the subwatershed study is being done over 3 phases, actually in parallel with the land use planning that Steve had described a few moments ago. The first phase is the characterization and integration. So this is where we're looking at the existing conditions on the landscape, getting an understanding of how they function, what the constraints and what the opportunities are for the future development in the area. The second phase is where we look at the diagnostics, really. This is when we consider the future development, and more importantly, what happens once that development occurs? What's it going to do to the environmental features and systems? That diagnostic exercise informs the management strategy and plan for the area. Brings us into the third phase, which is looking at that management plan in a little bit more detail. But more important is also looking at the next stages of planning and design. So what are the requirements of the future studies, and what are requirements for monitoring as everything goes forward to make sure that everything is functioning as it's intended. We also have within our study preparing a stormwater management master plan. So this is looking specifically at the future infill and intensification within the existing urban area in Smithville, and developing a recommended stormwater management plan for the redevelopment and infill development in that area. Now, as you see here, we are still in the first phase, just coming to the end of it now, with the draft report going to be prepared at the beginning of 2021. Next slide, please, Raymond. So in order to inform the land use planning process and allow everything to move in parallel, back in the spring of this year, we provided what we're calling a preliminary characterization of the features and the systems based upon a desktop review of the data that had been provided. So all the databases, all the mapping, various reports and studies. From that information, we provided some constraint ranking for various features and systems on the site and within the study area. So the high potential constraint features are ones that would be anticipated to be regulated and have to be protected in situ, exactly where they are. Moderate potential constraints are features on the landscape which provide some function that has to be replicated and have a regulation applied to it, but don't necessarily have to be protected in situ. Best example is some water courses in certain instances have to be protected and regulated, but don't have to be retained exactly where they are on the landscape. And then there are the low potential constraint features that have a function that has to be provided in the future post-development, but it doesn't require regulation and it doesn't require having the feature exactly in that location on the landscape. The key word that we've used in here is potential. So each of these constraint rankings is subject to some refinement and revision as part of our detailed assessment work for the subwatershed study. But again, this has provided the initial input for the land use planning to proceed. So if we go to the next few slides, Raymond. So just looking at some of the information that we have provided so far to the ACOM. The first one is showing the terrestrial constraints, and we have a color coding that's applied to the different constraint rankings. Red is a high constraint, which we expect is going to have to be protected on the landscape. And from the terrestrial standpoint, these are primarily significant woodlots, significant wildlife habitat areas, and provincially significant wetlands that are within the area. From the watercourse standpoint, we do, of course, have the 20-mile creek, which runs right through, which just by virtue of the size of that system is a high constraint to the area. But we also have some of these moderate and low constraints. So these are the ones that are going to be of particular interest when we drill into the details of the subwatershed study. The next slide, please. From the water resources standpoint, our interest is in those open drainage features and the floodplains within the area. What we're seeing is that the floodplains are currently defined on the 20-mile creek and along the North Creek. The North Creek is at the south limit of the area, as well as along a tributary of the Spring Creek just over to the east. With respect to the drainage features themselves, we see that a lot of them are green, and this means from the water resources standpoint, they're a low constraint. They allow water to move from one side of the landscape to the other, and that has to be replicated post-development, but there's really not a need to have a regulated or necessarily open drainage feature for that purpose. There are a couple that are shown in blue that we've identified from the high level that may actually attract a regulation, although they're not currently regulated. Again, this is something we're going to be looking at in further detail through the subwatershed study process. Next slide, please, Raymond. The fluvial side of things looks at the stability of the water courses and looks a little bit at some of the habitat value that they provide. Very much the same as what we were seeing from the water resources standpoint. Most of these are green, they're that lower level, which means just replicating the function post-development. But there are, once again, a few of them that we're going to be looking at through in combination with the other disciplines, just to verify the function and confirm the status in terms of regulation. Next slide, please, Raymond. The groundwater is really looking at the sensitivity of the hydrogeology in the area. We were looking at what's called the overburden thickness, which is really the thickness of the more permeable soils that you might have in the area. Where you've got that thickness of 6 meters or less, that's an indication of a potential sensitivity. So this map is showing in green where we have those areas that are a thickness of 6 meters. But from our perspective, given everything we know of the groundwater in this area and the reliance on that system, we're not seeing this as a significant constraint. This is considered to be a low constraint, meaning that whatever impacts there may be on the supply of the groundwater, the quality and the quantity or the amount, can be mitigated through the stormwater management plan that we'll be developing. Next slide, please, Raymond. And lastly, with respect to the karst in the area, the karst features are really the holes and the openings in the limestone bedrock that you have within the escarpment. What we found is within certain areas that are circled on the map here, there are some karst features, as few as 2 and as many as 4 in any one given location. What we found though as well, you can see from the table on the side, there are 4 of them that have been identified as a high constraint. So these are going to require some form of protection once the development proceeds. Rather fortuitously, a lot of these are actually coinciding and occurring with high constraint terrestrial features as well on the landscape. So it can be integrated rather seamlessly with the protection of those features as well. Next slide, please, Raymond. So as I'd mentioned before, the preliminary characterization results are going to be verified with our characterization report. The draft report is due at the end of January 2021. And the integrated constraints that we're going to be establishing through that phase 1 report are going to be representing the basis from which we'll be developing the management strategies and the recommendations for phases 2 and 3 of the subwatershed study. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Carl and Steve.
Thanks a lot, Aaron. The next slides provide a summary of the background characterization report. The report provides understanding of the existing infrastructure conditions and planning considerations that are required for future growth, looking at inside and outside of the approved Smithville boundary. Raymond, next slide, please. With respect to municipal water, the Niagara region water model has been updated to reflect the latest below ground, linear, and above ground infrastructure. The model will be used to confirm current and future water system transmission and storage requirements to meet growth. Let's go to the next slide, please, Ray. Similar to water, the Niagara Region wastewater model was updated to reflect current infrastructure conditions. The model will be analyzed to confirm sanitary sewage pumping and conveyance capacity to meet future growth. Next slide, please. Looking at transportation, the existing transportation network and associated infrastructure has been confirmed and was used to create a traffic model specific to Smithville. The model's focus is on existing performance of road network and how it will be affected by the future growth. In terms of existing conditions, most of the roads in Smithville are operating around about 50% capacity, which is good. That means there's considerable capacity available. We're seeing high volumes in the AM peak along Regional Road 20 and also northbound travel on Canberra Street. We've also noted inconsistent cycling and walking infrastructure spread out throughout the community. In terms also, data is also being provided for the current Niagara Region on-demand transit pilot that considers mobility needs for those who don't have personal vehicles. So, next slide. Impacts to agriculture is an important consideration when determining how and where Smithville will grow. So as part of the characterization, we've completed an agricultural impact assessment study. That study notes that the predominant land use in the area and around Smithville includes common field crops and residences, along with over 120 potential livestock operations. Much of the land around Smithville is prime agricultural. The agricultural impact assessment study notes that future development should try and avoid prime agricultural areas with intense uses such as livestock operations, or if they can't be avoided, try your best to minimize them through mitigative measures and design. Next slide, Raymond, please. Similar to agriculture, the potential for urban boundary expansion to impact or displace aggregate resources was reviewed. The review determined that while significant aggregate resources are located to the north of Smithville, actual bedrock extraction in this area is not realistic given the close proximity to the Smithville urban area. It would be quite difficult to get a brand new resource extraction operation approved so close to the built up area. Next slide, please, Raymond. The potential to impact archaeological resources was determined through the completion of a stage 1 archaeological assessment. Areas of low, moderate, and high archaeological potential were identified and will be considered as the lands develop. Next slide, please, Ray. Public input from the first round of consultation stressed the importance of maintaining Smithville's character as the community grows. Cultural heritage resource inventory was completed. That inventory identified over 100 cultural heritage resources, such as buildings and monuments. 3 cultural heritage landscapes were also identified, including generally the downtown section, Station Street, and West Street. as you can see on the attached map. These resources and landscapes will be part of the community concept design and urban design guideline process. I think I'm done right now. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Steve, who will walk us through the preliminary development concepts.
Okay, thank you, Carl. And you can advance to the next slide, Raymond. So all of that information, which is nicely summarized for us by Carl and Aaron, has been used along with some land use planning or land use considerations in developing kind of a simplified view of the existing community structure and what some of the opportunities and constraints are to help shape, the potential land use configuration and options for the expansion area. So the areas colored here in yellow represent the existing predominantly low density residential neighborhoods in Smithville. Those are mostly built out. There are some new development areas captured in that as well, such as in the northwest quadrant, where there's some draft plans of subdivision in process. The next major land use area is in the northeast part of Smithville, where you have a concentration of the majority of industrial type land uses and some additional land available as well for continued employment growth. There are a couple of secondary plan areas as well, in addition to the northwest quadrant secondary plan. We've just highlighted the Spring Creek secondary plan and the new east area secondary plan areas in purple, just to flag that the final land use configuration and land use permissions in the official plan are still in process or being reviewed. So this map may change as we go forward as those secondary plans are completed. And then of course in green, we have the 20 Mile Creek corridor and its associated valley land and open space and key community facilities. So that's what the CF stands for. Some of that is of course outside of the current urban area, so the Leisureplex in the southwest. We do have other significant corridors such as the hydro corridor, hydro transmission corridor to the north of Smithville, currently borders the north limit of the employment area, and significant rail corridor as well that runs through the community and is kind of northwest southeast direction, north of Regional Road 20. And then we have identified, related to the land use pattern, the key transportation corridors as well. So this is really identifying arterial and collector streets that have a significant traffic function, or maybe some multimodal function today, or may have that in the future. And really just identifying the directions of travel that those roads carry. And in the center of it all is the core of Smithville, the historical downtown core, which is identified in the official plan as the focal point for infill intensification, which was summarized on November 9th. We do have a couple of other nodes identified as well in the current official plan. So commercial plaza area at Regional Road 20 and Industrial Park Road. That's an existing retail development. And then a future node at the new roundabout at Regional Road 20 in the northwest, as well as part of the northwest quadrant secondary plan, where there's some opportunity for commercial uses and mixed land uses there as well. So the gray shaded area surrounding the existing urban area is, in addition to looking at the existing community, is the other major focus of our work, where it is identifying opportunities and constraints for future potential urban expansion. Next slide, please. So these maps just superimpose some of those opportunities and constraints that Aaron and Carl highlighted for us on the surrounding area, the urban expansion area that we're studying surrounding the existing built-up area or urban area of Smithville. So that the map on the left side of the slide shows where you have some agricultural and environmental constraints. The agricultural constraints relate to minimum distance separation from existing livestock operations. So those are shown as the circles in various colors. And then of course we have the environmental features that are required in accordance with provincial and regional policy to be protected, and the differing levels of constraint that those require in relation to development. So the high, medium, and low levels of constraint. Are some hazard areas as well identified, such as the regulatory floodplain associated with 20 Mile Creek, and the karst areas that Aaron described for us. So when you look at all of these constraints on that left map, where you end up is that you have about 68% of that area available to consider other future land uses, while 32%, or about 220 hectares, really can't be developed because of those constraints. The slide on the right side just indicates the soil capability in addition to the MDS ARCs. So there's different classifications that have been established through the Canada Land Inventory. Obviously, the highest classification, or the most capable land for farming, is Class 1. The majority of the land surrounding the existing Smithville community boundary or urban boundary is Class 2 and 3. So it is prime agricultural land. And for that reason, we have to make our best effort to balance outward growth with infill intensification, make efficient use of land, and demonstrate that we're mitigating impacts to agriculture to the extent possible as we think about urban expansion.
Thank you.
And next slide, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so I'll summarize the two land use concepts that we've developed. This is the first concept, and again, not a preferred concept necessarily, but one that we've presented and developed for evaluation purposes at this point to explore different land use options. So now we're showing not only the area within the current urban boundary of Smithville, but what a future land use scenario could look like as you expand outwards. So this would be roughly a 30-year build out when we're looking at these scenarios. So we are planning to the year 2051. And we've highlighted key land use areas based on the opportunities and constraints that I've summarized previously. And in the pie chart in the bottom left corner of the slide illustrates how the study area, the expansion area, has been divided up amongst different land uses. So again, we have, as shown in the legend, we have future residential shown in the light yellow, with medium or mixed use residential shown in orange. Employment areas or potential expansion of the existing employment area is shown in the kind of the brown or beige color. We've got future open space and community facilities identified, again, conceptually, how they may be located and distributed relative to the residential areas to make sure that there's good access to those types of facilities. We've identified potential options for different community nodes. So at kind of more the neighborhood scale, that could help to service those future residential neighborhoods. Key transportation and street linkages where you accommodate the majority of future traffic movements to collect the traffic from those development areas and feed them to the arterial and collector road network that exists, as well as thinking about those streets in a complete street context. So how can those streets also tie together as an active transportation system? One of the key distinguishing features between the two concepts is the location of a potential future truck bypass for Smithville. So we've shown that as a north route in concept 1. You can see the blue line that goes north from Regional Road 20, basically following the west edge of the study area to, I believe it's Yonge Street in the north, and then coming back along Industrial Park Road to connect to Regional Road 20. This is just building on some of the conceptual routing identified in the region's transportation master plan, as well as the objective of removing in the future commercial truck traffic from the core area of Smithville to make sure that that area is as intensification and pedestrian and people friendly as possible. So if I can go get you to advance to the next slide, Raymond, I'll just summarize some of the key features of concept 2. So a little bit different layout in concept 2. You can see that the main difference here is that in concept 1, employment area growth was really focused going north of the hydro corridor as sort of a land use buffer, whereas in concept 2, we're continuing residential neighborhood development patterns even beyond the hydro corridor in the long term. And instead looking at having a new employment area considered in the southwest of Smithville. And that would align or be based upon the original Smithville truck bypass route that was identified in 1971 as a Highway 20 bypass back when Regional Road 20 was still a provincial highway. Now that bypass route actually does not follow Town Line Road, that 1971 bypass route. What we've identified is sort of a hybrid of the corridor that was identified in 1971 along the west side of Smithville, and some linkages to the existing road network as we know it today. Again, with the objective of connecting West Street or Regional Road 20 before you come into the urban area of Smithville with Regional Road 20 in the southeast of Smithville to get that commercial truck traffic outside of the core area of the community. So as a result of looking at land use in that configuration, you do get a different distribution between employment and more of a focus on employment than residential in terms of land allocation. But we've maintained the idea of trying to have balanced neighborhoods where as much as possible you have good access to community facilities, a mix of transportation options, locally serving commercial uses in these nodes that would help provide walkable access to most homes in these neighborhoods for daily needs, but while also recognizing that the core area of Smithville will continue to be the commercial node, the main commercial node going forward. So those are some of the highlights of the two concepts. There's a lot more detail to them, obviously, but if you can go to the next slide, Raymond, I'll just summarize again how we looked at these areas in terms of the general community planning principles that we were thinking about. And these principles are all based on a combination of objectives, building on land use planning, good land use planning principles, but importantly, conforming to the policies that the township is required to address as well. So there's obviously the provincial growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and the township's planning is required to conform with that. The provincial policy statement, again, have to be consistent with that. The regional official plan, which provides at a regional scale some of the more detailed regional interests that stem from that provincial growth plan and PPS. And then, of course, the township official plan and local objectives towards making Smithville a more complete and sustainable community. This is just an excerpt of one of the two concepts where we've shown some of the ideas that fed into the concepts that were generated. So again, a range of housing types, and we've shown some examples of precedent images illustrating where you have mixed low density, two-story dwellings, as well as bungalow for older adults. And you've got even three-story multi-unit dwellings identified, kind of as being the focus of the different types of housing that we would envision for the expansion area as it grows. For the road network, again, thinking not only about how to move traffic efficiently and address access to property, but looking at those corridors as opportunities for complete streets that are pedestrian friendly and provide opportunities for cyclists as well. The mixed use nodes shown in red, where you'd have more of those community centers or neighborhood centers, where you have that mix of residential at a higher density, as well as some street level commercial opportunities, again, for convenience and access within the neighborhoods. supplemented again by community facilities and highly accessible locations. So as we know, as the community grows, there's going to be a need for more schools, more libraries, more recreational facilities, more parks. And so having those clustered and concentrated in key locations that are accessible and along the key road network is one of the kind of fundamental principles that has been applied to developing these concepts. Linking the open space system as well, not only for natural heritage and environmental protection reasons, but also for connectivity or trail opportunities. So utilizing open space corridors to create that pedestrian and cycling network and multi-use trail opportunity, building on your Trails and Corridors Master Plan. And then finally, I'll just mention, we looked at how to ensure land use compatibility, and accommodating that ideal mix of land uses where you have places for business, places for jobs, places for industry, places for institutions and residential housing, but all oriented in a complementary way so that they are compatible with each other. We've just identified some precedent images of some good practices around those types of buildings and areas. If you can advance to the next slide, Raymond. So this will just round out the discussion on the two concepts. In both concepts, we were trying to include the concept of a connected natural heritage and open space system, which I just mentioned. And this just shows on a community-wide scale how some of those corridors could be linked together, building on that Smithville Trails and Corridors Master Plan that was done about 8 years ago. And having that hierarchy of primary routes that connect and loop through the community and connect key destinations, secondary corridors along things like collector roads and other secondary trailways, and then primary off-road routes and secondary off-road routes as well. And then each of those, components of the hierarchy would have different standards of development and maintenance considerations and associated uses. We've highlighted here as well how those two items can work together, where you have a linked parks and open space system, trails and corridors network that also supplements the natural heritage system, providing wildlife linkages. So I know that's a lot of information for tonight in terms of the work that we've done so far and how it's fed into some concept development. If you could go to the next slide, Raymond, I think our Carl is going to wrap up the presentation by describing where we go with this next. Back to you, Carl. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Steve. Moving forward, the above work will be presented to the public in a virtual format in early 2021. Unfortunately, we won't be able to meet face-to-face, so we'll be revisiting our communications and consultation plan to see how we can meet virtually effectively and make it engaging. PIC 1 will also summarize how public feedback from the first PIC was considered and is being used in the work we've done to date. And that ends the presentation.
So we'd welcome any questions from members of the committee if you have any. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for a long but very informative presentation. So it's good to have a look at potential concepts after reading reports and so on. That's an exciting part. I'm going to go to members of committee to see if they have any questions for you. And I saw Councillor Riley with his hand up before. So Councillor Riley, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the gentleman for the presentation, all the people that took part in the presentation there. It definitely was a lot to take in, and thankfully we had the slides beforehand so we could kind of be a little prepared. I did want to bring attention to concept 1 and 2. Again, like I realized we're going to go to the public and get some more input there, but I just know looking at this and looking at the 2 and figuring out what the future holds for a community, I definitely have concerns with concept 2. I think in relation to the truck bypass, I think our community is going to grow north. Businesses want to be closer to the QEW, and being able to like move things, out of town and into town. And, in concept 1, it shows that bypass actually going through our already designated employment area. And to me, that just makes the most logistical sense here as far as businesses are already going to be on the way. If we're going to drive traffic down and around while we're putting schools like Smithville Christian High School, residents and students across the street there at risk, even Smithville Public, like that, I'm just kind of curious the thought process behind driving that southward versus what they originally had northern. I realize these are just concepts, but still I would be concerned for safety, and even just like logistically speaking, businesses want to be closer to the QEW, not further away. And by having it go south, it actually pushes the employment opportunities or future employment areas more southern. So anyways, I think I just wanted to mention that more or less, get some clarity, maybe a better understanding of why that was even considered as a second option, to push that kind of southern than northern.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Bylsma?
Yeah, so I echo exactly what Councilor Riley said, just in general principles. And now I have to confess, I did get a peek at this, not only before in our package, but some time ago. One of the questions that I raised then, and I'm just going to enter it at this point. Of course, you got the PICs and all that coming up, but that hydro corridor, another concern that I have with that hydro corridor, especially with the concept 2 image, the residential kind of straddling it, where I feel that the hydro corridor is probably a little bit more, would have less concerns if it was bounded by employment areas or future, commercial areas, those kind of things. The other question that I had was the potential for not necessarily using the hydro corridor as a road, but as a potential buffer for, I guess, lack of a better way of piggybacking the a bypass, a north bypass along the hydro corridor, since it's already aligned, kind of in the sand, so to speak. It's an easement usually, or some, it can be used, for certain, shallow purposes, I guess. But I think there's an opportunity there to perhaps use it as a guide for the bypass. So rather than have the bypass go all the way farther north, and use an existing road, it's an opportunity to develop a nice, good bypass road, and piggyback it along an existing hydro corridor that will also allow a good pickup and logistics for employment lands in that area. So that hydro corridor, I keep coming back to it. I think there's an opportunity there to utilize it a little bit more effectively, if not on the actual footprint of the hydro corridor, alongside of it.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments from members of committee? Councilor Rayner, you are not muted. Did you have a question?
No, I appreciate the fact that it was mentioned the prime agricultural land, and we have to minimize as much as possible disturbing the agricultural area because of its value to the community. So I'm very pleased that they brought that forward, and I just hope it's used down in the road when the urban boundary expansion is considered, that we don't destroy a lot of very good agricultural land unnecessarily. And I believe that point was made, and I very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes. And will you mute your mic now, please, sir?
I can't. The damn thing's screwed up again. I need Roberta.
Okay, thank you. But we did hear your comment in the middle of the presentation, which is why I noticed that you were not muted. Okay, any others? Councilor Trombetta, you're not on this view. So I don't know whether you have your hand up. Did you have anything you wish to say?
No, I'm here. Can you see my face?
I can see you now, but because the screen, the big view is on, I have to keep looking up and down on the side to see. So I just didn't want to miss you. Okay, so I think probably we're finished with questions or comments, unless Mr. Treble, you had something you wanted to chime in
I think,
on.
Madam Chair, just the only thing I really want to say is that concepts 1 and 2 were meant really to stimulate discussion. And so the comments that we've heard from council tonight are really part of the reasoning for the concepts. I'm not convinced myself personally that either one of the concepts will be the final plan after we've gone through all of the extensive work, but we have a great consulting team leading the way. They wanted to speak to you guys before they went to the public. That's the reason for this presentation. We'll meet with the public. They'll carry on with their studies, and we'll be back with detailed recommendations sometime later on in 2021. And otherwise, this was really to make sure council was sort of up to speed before the public became aware of concepts and proposals.
Good. Okay. Thank you for that comment. And thank you again, gentlemen, for your presentation tonight. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to request to address items on the agenda. Okay, thank you. Each time someone puts on or takes off a screen sharing, I lose my screen and have to go back to it again. So I have a list of people who were meant to be on, but I don't know whether they are involved with planning or not. So I'm going to still ask if there are any members of the public wishing to discuss anything on this agenda tonight. Okay, I think we're good. So we're going to move on then to consent agenda items. All items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial and can be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless
I'm not seeing any.
Thanks, Roberta. Unless a council member requests it, in which case the item will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. So the recommendation, I'm going to read the items first since there are 7 of them, and then I'm going to go to the recommendation. So number 1 is an information report number PD-151-2020, Spring Creek Heights Secondary Plan Update. Number 2 is a technical report number PD-150-2020, Local Road Policies, Public Consultation and Draft Policy. Number 3 is a technical report number PD-153-2020, Casterville United Church, file number 1601-009-20, Zoning Bylaw Amendment. Number 4 is a technical report, number PD-152-2020, Niagara Pallets 2906 and 2930 South Grimsby Road 8, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, file number 1601-008-20. Number 5 is a recommendation report, number PD-141-20, a heritage designation at 200 St. Catherine Street. Number 6, a recommendation report number PD-157-2020, signing authority Schedule A to data licensing and reciprocation agreement with the region of Niagara for parcel fabric information. And number 7, a recommendation report number PD-155-2020, renewal of a contract for hearing officer services between the City of Thorold and the Township of West Lincoln relating to parking services and AMPS program. So the recommendation is that item 1, 2, 3, and 4 be and are hereby received for information, and items 5, 6, and 7 are hereby received, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted. So I need a mover, please. Councillor Riley, and a seconder. Councillor Trombetta. Okay, nobody has anything they wish to pull? I didn't see any hands about.
Yeah,
Jonker, sorry.
I do have something. I want to pull number 1 just to question something.
Okay, fair enough.
And number 4, please.
Okay, so Junker and number 4. Okay, so we're going to leave out 1 and leave out 4. So the recommendation now reads that item 2 and 3 be and are hereby received for information, and items 5, 6, and 7 are hereby received, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted. And I have Councillor Riley and Trombetta. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that recommendation carries. Okay, Councillor Jonker requested item 1 to be pulled. So it's an information report number PD-151-2020 Spring Creek Heights Secondary Plan Update. And it is to be received for information. So Councillor Jonker, would you like to move that? And a seconder, please. Mayor Bilsma. Okay, Councillor Jonker, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, through you, Madam Chair, to Director of Planning, in the overview, it was mentioned a commitment by staff to further discuss with the John Calvin Canadian Reformed School Society was permitted at that time. And then a little farther on, let me try to find that again, it talks about the Canadian Reformed Church. Are these two separate people that we're discussing things with, Director? Like two separate parties? Or is it actually the same one and it's just not printed in there correctly?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it would be the latter, sir. Good catch on your part. We had a meeting with a group who I believe represented the school more than the church.
That would be what I would think as well, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, through you, Madam Chair, we had a good meeting within the last 10 days or so. And I anticipate hearing back from that group. So staff agreed that we would hold back and see what they had to say before we brought a recommendation report forward.
Okay, Councillor, are you satisfied with that? Okay, good. So I'm going to call for the vote on that item being received for information. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Rayner, you wanted to pull number 4, which is a technical report number PD-152-2020 Niagara Pallets 2906 and 2930 South Grimsby Road 8 zoning bylaw amendment file number 1601-008-20. And again, it was to be received for information. Would you like to move that, sir?
Yeah, I'll move it.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Riley. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. Through to Mr. Treble. I had the technical breakdown at that time when they were going through this, but there was some mention about you can't have a farm lot less than 40 hectares. Somehow this related to this in any way? I heard 40 hectare and then the sound went out. Is something to do with that on this, or is that just another part that's not relevant to this?
Through you, Madam Chair, the 40 hectare piece is somewhat relevant. The 40 hectare piece actually comes from our new zoning bylaw, which talks about minimum lot size in the agricultural area. And the 40 hectares is a provision that's pretty close to what the province requires for sort of your standard cash crop operations. The situation in this case is that the remnant farm holding after the severance of 1 acre to be added to the business put the remnant parcel lower than the 40 hectares. So there's a piece of the zoning that will come forward for recommendation that will include a recognition of a minimum lot size deficient from 40 hectares for the farm parcel. That's the only role that the 40 plays in this case.
And how much will that be?
The minimum for the farm appears to be about 19.4 hectares. But we've only, through you, Madam Chair, we've only taken 0.5 hectares off. So it started at less than 20 hectares in this case.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair, this is confusing then. If it can't be less than 40 and it's down to 19 already, isn't it already way below what it should be to start with? Therefore, we shouldn't be fooling with it or taking anything away from it because it's already extremely deficient from the provinces and the townships' objectives of 40 hectare, which is roughly 100 acres if you put it in English.
Through you, Madam Chair, there's one main focus for the 40 hectare rule, and that's Usually in the event that there is a severance in the agricultural area, that a farmer wants to take an existing farm parcel and split it into multiple different farm parcels, then each parcel should in theory be about 40 hectares. And we're actually working with one farmer in the township over towards Victoria Avenue, who has a large parcel that actually can be divided into about 4 40-hectare parcels. There aren't too many of those in the township, but this one's large enough that it could be divided 4 ways. In this case, the piece of land that's actually being taken off to add to the business is inside the hamlet. So we're not technically, in a theoretical sense, changing the size of the farm parcel. So I'm not as worried about it in this case, even though it is substantially smaller than the 40.
Yes, Madam Chair, back to the director again. I'm concerned that obviously we're cutting up agricultural land. We're not taking a lot. 1 acre is not really that sufficient. But are we not possibly setting a precedent for somebody else who may want to sever some and say, well, I can sever mine, but it's only 32 hectares, it's not 40. And then they would say, but you made exceptions before. So this is the question I would ask: is this setting a precedent for your so-called 40 hectare is what we're looking for, or do you feel comfortable with that?
Through you, Madam Chair. In this case, I feel very comfortable with the proposal as presented because of the fact that it is a piece that's actually inside the hamlet that's coming off the farm. That makes a difference. A lot of the farmers don't have that opportunity.
All right, I agree and I follow with you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so are there any further questions on this item 4? Okay, all those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so the next piece of business is communications. I hope that you read it because I'm going to read you a very long resolution. So it's item P85-20. It is communication from Brenda Johnson, the chair, and Bruce McKenzie, vice chair of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. Read the changes to Conservation Authorities Act and Conservation Authorities' role in land use planning. So if you've been reading the newspaper lately, you will know why this is coming before us. Recommendation. Whereas the province has introduced Bill 229, Protect, Support, and Recover from COVID-19 Act, Schedule 6, Conservation Act, whereas the legislation introduces a number of changes and new sections that could remove and or significantly hinder the Conservation Authority's role in regulating development and engaging in review and appeal of municipal planning applications. Whereas we rely on the watershed expertise provided by local conservation authorities to protect residents, property, and local natural resources on a watershed basis by regulating development and engaging in reviews of applications submitted under the Planning Act. Whereas the changes allow the minister to make decisions without Conservation Authority watershed data and expertise. Whereas the legislation suggests that the minister will have the ability to establish standards and requirements for non-mandatory programs, which are negotiated between the conservation authorities and municipalities to meet local watershed needs. Whereas municipalities require a longer transition time to put in place agreements with conservation authorities for non-mandatory programs. Whereas municipalities believe that the appointment of municipal representatives on Conservation Authority boards should be a municipal decision, and the chair and vice chair of the Conservation Authority board should be duly elected. Whereas the changes to the duty of members contradicts the fiduciary duty of a Conservation Authority board member to represent the best interests of the Conservation Authority and its responsibility to the watershed. Whereas conservation authorities have already been working with the province, development sector, and municipalities to streamline and speed up permitting and planning approvals through Conservation Ontario's Client Service and Streamlining Initiative. Whereas changes to the legislation will create more red tape and costs for the conservation authorities and their municipal partners and potentially result in delays in the development approval process. And whereas municipalities value and rely on the natural habitats and water resources within our jurisdiction for the health and well-being of residents, municipalities value the Conservation Authority's work to prevent and manage the impacts of flooding and other natural hazards, and municipalities value the Conservation Authority's work to ensure safe drinking water. Pardon me. Therefore, be it resolved. 1, that the province of Ontario work with conservation authorities to address their concerns by repealing and or amending changes to the Conservation Authorities Act and the Planning Act. 2, that the province of Ontario delay enactment of clauses affecting municipal concerns. 3, that the province of Ontario provide a longer transition period up to December 2022 for non-mandatory programs to enable coordination of conservation authority municipal budget processes. 4, that the province respect the current conservation authority municipal relationships. 5, and that the province embrace their long-standing partnership with the conservation authorities and provide them with the tools and financial resources that they need to effectively implement their watershed management role. I need a mover, please. Mayor Bilsma. And a seconder, Councillor Jonker. Are there any questions or comments on this? Mayor Bilsma.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just so this came up just a bit of a background. This came up very, very quickly by the province. There were extensive consultations that took place in 2019 with respect to that, and to a large extent, they weren't necessarily reflected in this Bill 229. There are concerns. So just at our last Conservation Authority meeting, there were concerns brought up about the ability for local conservation authorities on the ground, boots on the ground in the various areas and locales. Obviously, you know, I think it could be said that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority is unique, and just as unique as Hamilton Conservation Authority and Toronto Conservation Authority and all the various, they all have a unique quality to them based on their geo and political structures. And there is no one size fits all. So that's very concerning. And so, you know, this was a memo or a resolution drafted by the conservation authorities to put effective concerns forward from the municipalities to the province with respecting Bill 229.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Rayner, I saw your hand.
Thank you. Madam Chair, is this therefore given to all the other 11 municipalities in the region of Niagara to endorse?
Yes, it is, as far as I know. Originally, I asked actually to have this item put on the agenda not before this letter came, because there had been also some of our local municipalities that were trying to do this on their own, and we're looking for our support to do this. And in the process of that, this came from the Conservation Authority. So I presume it was to make sure that we're sending uniform support of our Conservation Authority.
Is this, Madam Chair, is this the same thing, or is it different than the recent resignation of David Crombie as the head of the Greenbelt Council because of his objections to Section 6 of the new bill?
I see the mayor is shaking his head, but I believe they are related. I think that, yeah, I think that they're related, and today 6 other members resigned from the Greenbelt.
They are related in the fact that it's going in the same omnibus bill, so they're being dealt with at the same time. Yeah, so they're related, but this is for conservation authorities, and that's Greenbelt, and they are
right. Well,
those
David,
two items are different, but I think the fact that, you know, the fact that the bill encompasses some things to do with the environment that I think people are looking at their own areas of expertise and their own areas of work and trying to pull that together. So
right. Well,
yeah.
David Crombie is well respected. He was former mayor of Toronto, I believe, and he's held in high regard, and he just immediately resigned because he was so upset with potentially what this bill would do to the environment, and anything dealing with the protection of the environment and the Greenbelt was in serious jeopardy with this bill. And he made it very clear his feelings, and a number of other people doing the same thing. So I don't know, are we sending a copy of this to Sam, or I mean, that's,
I think that, yeah,
or it should go, and also, well, I guess it's a provincial thing, so it can't go to Allison. It's not going to do any good there, but if it would go to Sam, I think at least it may help a little bit.
thank you. So moving forward, what we need to do and where this goes will depend, of course, on all of the municipalities in the region putting this in place in this month, and then that will go together as a package. Yes, I'm sure that our clerk might know more about that, but Councillor Jonker.
Yeah, and I just like to note too that I'm glad to see this come up because it was there's also a lot of other municipalities that have been passing the same resolution. So it's a concern for not just the Niagara region, but throughout the whole province, right? So yes, so
Yeah,
good.
And of course, we don't have Greenbelt that we have to worry about, but
Yes.
you have a great deal of watershed that we need to look at. We've looked at our presentation that we just saw earlier. We certainly will need some expertise there. Any other councillor comment?
Madam Chair,
Councillor, second time.
you say we don't have a green belt?
I say we don't have in West Lincoln that same worry about Greenbelt, right? I mean,
We do have a green
are
belt.
concerned about it because we live in Ontario, but in terms of building, that's not what our conservation.
No, but we do have a green belt in West Lincoln.
Yes, but not in
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
relationship to our building capacity,
Right.
right?
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to call on the vote. All those in favor of this recommendation? Thank you. That motion carries. Okay, so we're moving to staff reports. Item P86-20, Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble. Recommendation report number PD-156-2020, the Master Community Plan Project and Landowners Letter dated October 15th, 2020. So the recommendation is 1, that report PD-156-2020 regarding recommendation report Master Community Plan Project and Landowners Letter dated October 15th, 2020. And the second date refers to the landowners letter dated December 7th, 2020 be received. And 2, that the consultants who have been hired to complete the Master Community Plan continue to prepare recommendations as required by the Master Community Plan and sub-watershed study terms of reference, including options for a bypass of Smithville. And 3, that the consultant team report back to Planning Committee and Council with their final recommendation in late 2021 as previously planned. So I need a mover for that now that I've stopped being tongue-tied. Councillor Riley. And seconder. Mayor Bylsma, thank you. Are there any questions or comments about this? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? No, I see none. Okay, that motion carries. Item P87-20, Director of Planning and Building, Brian Treble, recommendation report number PD-154-2020, authority to enter a development charge credit / front-ending agreement with Dunlow Developments, Inc. The recommendation is that report PD-154-20 regarding recommendation report authority to enter a development charge credit / front-ending agreement with Dunlow Developments, Inc. dated December 7th, 2020 be received. And 2, that an authorizing bylaw be passed to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a development charge / credit / front-ending agreement with Dunlow Developments, Inc. similar to a preliminary draft version found at attachment 2 to this report, once engineering design has been completed and the agreement has been confirmed by Township Legal Counsel. So again, I need a mover, please. Councillor Jonker and Councillor Trombetta, second. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, under other business, we have P-88-20, where members of committee again get an opportunity to offer up information or provide comments. Mayor Bylsma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to highlight that this Friday, there's the drive-through Christmas dinner proceeds at Silverdale Hall and proceeds to the community care. Again, I just have great admiration for the neighbors in that community who kind of continue to keep that pressure and some of those traditions alive. They've done their barbecues in a safe manner through the summer and fall. And this is their third and final installment of their trifecta of dinners. And yeah, there's going to be some try to make it as festive as possible at a drive-through. So, you know, I don't know. I don't think there's going to be live reindeer or anything like that, but you know, they're going to do their best to spread some cheer.
Councillor Riley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess just to backpack that off a little bit, I believe also Saturday, we have our drive-through Santa and food drive being put on by the Fire Association and Tim Hortons, and I think partners with Kiwanis and you know, a few other organizations. So, you know, that's also taking place. I believe that's happening from, maybe you might have to help me here. I think it's like, was it 10 to 3 or 10 to 2? 10 to 2. So definitely a worthwhile thing there. I also thought I'd mention something that just came up today regarding what's going to be taking place on Friday as well from 3 to 8 is the donate blood. What do you call it? The blood drive there. It's going to be at John Calvin's school around 3 o'clock there. So for those, they definitely need some more people still. They're doing appointment based only, so you can't just show up like you could before. So I thought that was worth noting, as well as I wanted to say, you know, thank you, Madam Chair, for the 2 years of chairing planning, environment, and building here. And I got big shoes to follow as well. I feel like I'm going to be calling you quite frequently to make sure, you know, I can do half a decent job as you did, but thank you for leading the way. And I think I learned a great deal, and, you know, look forward to taking over in January.
Okay, thank you. Pass the baton. That's the time. Councillor Yonker.
Yeah, just want to remind everybody that the Toonie Toy Drive will be ending this week. So if you have not donated to the bottles yet, they're going to be out till the 7th. Maybe some will be picked up earlier. Good news, I had to pick up one bottle because the business owner was worried about how much money was in there. So to the community out in the flat top area, the restaurant there, they definitely have been collecting well there, and just, yeah, heads up that the bottles will be picked up this week, and hopefully we get a good result from that.
Yes. So today is the 7th, and I did start picking up my bottles, and some businesses are just not open to the public, and some are, and so there are varying amounts. But the Kiwanis did make a donation of $1,000 to the Toonie Drive campaign, knowing that some businesses weren't open. So, you know, I think everybody's just doing the best that they can, and that's all we can do. Madam CAO, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. I did want to clarify that my earlier peace sign indicating the hour 2 was not correct. The food drive and the drive by Santa that is being hosted by the West Lincoln Fire Services of the association is going from 10 until 1.
Until only 1. Good. We offered to help, and I'm hoping it's not going to be a really cold day out in the boonies of the Leisureplex. So 1's even better. I thought you were going to say 3, and I thought I'll be freezing cold. But anyway, okay. So anyone else with something they wanted to add? No, we're good. Okay, so under new business, it's only for items that require immediate attention. Direction must first, and we need a motion to move forward. I didn't hear from anyone of anything to that sort, so I presume that we're moving now to confidential. The next portion of this meeting will be closed to the public to consider the following pursuant to section 239 subsection 2 of the Municipal Act 2001. The recommendation is that the next portion of this meeting be closed to the public to consider the following pursuant to section 239 subsection 2 of the Municipal Act 2001. Item 12.1 is Township Solicitor Tom Richardson and BMA Management Consulting Inc. Jim Brazis, and Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, re-legal solicitor client privilege development charge bylaw LPAT appeal. Applicable closed session exemptions, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And item 12.2 is CAO Bev Hendry, legal matters, Niagara Peninsula Energy Incorporated and Peninsula West Power Incorporated. The applicable closed session exemptions are the security of the property of the municipality, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees, or information, example, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality and has monetary value. So I need someone to move that motion, please, to take us into close. Councillor Trombetta And seconder, Councillor Jonker. All those in favor? Okay, so just a reminder that we are going to close out this session, and we will move into another Zoom session with something that's been sent to us while we, the recommendation is that this committee meeting does now resume in open session at the hour of 10:35. I need a mover, please. Mayor Bilsma and a seconder, Councillor Trombetta. All those in favor? That motion carries. Okay, so based on item P89-20, which was on Township Solicitor Tom Richardson, consultant with BMA Management Consulting Team Jim Bruzzese, and Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble. The recommendation is that the letter from Tom Richardson, Sullivan Mahoney Township Solicitor, dated December 2nd, 2020, regarding Township of West Lincoln Development Charges Bylaw 2019, be received, and 2, that the recommendations outlined within the above letter be approved, and 3, that the minutes of settlement be signed by Tom Richardson, our Township Solicitor. So I need a mover, please. Councillor Jonker and Mayor Bilsma, seconder. All those in favor? Motion carries. And our second item was a verbal update only from our CAO, Bev Hendry, regarding legal matters with Niagara Peninsula Energy Incorporated and Penn West Power. So there will be nothing coming out of that. And Councillor Riley, you are here just in time for us to adjourn the meeting.
So I had to come back in, sorry to interrupt, through Bev's link, because the other link just sent me to the attendees, so.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. This was my final meeting. And so I declare this meeting adjourned at the hour of 10:36. And